Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Greek Mythology, God of the Gods. Chapter 81. Rumble. Water and fire, light and shadow intertwine. The ultimate collision of force and force. The sound of continuous collisions and waves intertwined. The boundless ocean and the world are shaking. The gods trembled, and the battle sounded endlessly. In the distant sky, Pontos is still a blazing sun that melts into the sky and hangs upside down from sea water. Infinite ocean waves roll. Water waves and blazing flames are intertwined, like the mighty force of the galaxy rewinding. Constantly bombard Phoros, Poseidon, the spirit stick, and the trident wave. The two Phoros also pushed their strength to the extreme, slashing water and fire from the sky and ocean one after another. The impact again and again. Collision after collision. Huge voids appeared in the boundless sea. The surrounding void and pitch-black cracks are even more densely covered like spider webs. The laws are chaotic and the authority is turbulent. Under the impact of the three great forces, it seems to have almost surpassed the limit that the world can bear. On the verge of contending with the root power of the derivative world. They are fighting, the sea gods of Poseidon and Pontos in the distance. The ongoing war is not over. The tragic fight caused the sea to be stained red with blood. The gods on both sides suffered countless casualties. Finally, Athena and Nike successfully defeated their opponents. Keto, the danger of the sea, Theomas, the wonder of the sea, and Pontus are the two main gods. Captured alive by these two goddesses, the balance of war began to tip. The goddess of war and the goddess of victory are with us. Defeat Pontos, and the Japanese rule the ocean. The sea gods of the Poseidon family looked wildly at the two glorious goddesses in the sky. Keep shouting. With high morale, he rushed towards the other gods of the Pontos family. Hear their cries of adoration for the Athena duo. In the temple of God of War in Olympus, Mount Tengaso retrieved a life of a port. His whole body was covered with bandages. Hearing this, she jumped up from the bed angrily. Asshole, I am the God of War, the invincible God of War. Who allowed you to worship her? The God of War roared too loudly and was too emotional. Unfortunately, the injury occurred. He immediately collapsed on the ground of the Temple of War, bleeding profusely. The nymph outside was so frightened that she exclaimed, "The war of the seas continues," accompanied by the victory of the two Athenas. The Pontos gods began to retreat steadily. Prometheus, opponent Nessus, the friend of the sea, hurriedly left the battle to gather the remnants. He is the strongest god outside of Pontos from the Pontos family. The strength is close to the high level of the main god, and has been entangled with Prometheus for a long time. Prometheus didn't hold him back. Silently came to the two of Athena. Laughing at himself, he said, "I'm really not good at fighting, you've all dealt with your opponents, but I can't do anything to Nessun." Athena chuckled and said, "Your Highness, Prometheus, you are not a god whose job is to fight. And this war, the key point of victory or defeat, is not with us." Quote. Her bright eyes are firmly cast into the depths of the ocean. At this moment, the defeat of the Pontos gods was noticed. During the fierce battle, Poseidon laughed loudly. "Pontos, it seems that your deep-sea gods are not strong enough, they have already been defeated by my soldiers. Poseidon, you who rely on a few foreign aids to support the situation, what qualifications do you have to talk about your strength in front of me?" Pontos' narrow eyes were full of coldness. Release the raging blazing power again, mixing with the endless waves. The majestic impact on the two surrounding opponents. Poseidon showed no sign of weakness either. Seeing the dawn of victory, he struggled mentally. The trident waved the boundless waves to resist the power of water and fire coming from the sky. The Phoros next to him also exploded with divine power. Cooperate with Pontos. After a brief run-in, the two teamed up and became more and more in harmony. In the fierce battle with Pontos, he did not lose the wind at all. As the battle continued, Pontos gradually became restless. With his strength, even if he faced 2 or 3 main gods of the 9th rank, he would still have the upper hand. But Poseidon is the current emperor of the sea. Hold a trident and stand in the boundless sea, and you will be blessed by the sea. The combat power is beyond the ordinary 9th rank of the main god. As for Phoros, he didn't know where the god came from. The strength is not inferior to Poseidon at all, and it is even more annoying to fight. Especially those deep silver eyes, which seem to be able to see through his every movement. So far in the battle, he failed to gain the slightest advantage. And the gods of his deep sea line over there have almost been defeated. If you can't take these two people down again, today is the day of his downfall. You juniors, don't think that this will defeat me, Pontos, only absolute strength can conquer everything. You guys, pick me up. Ongoing battle. Poros's heart skipped a beat. In front of Pontos's body, the infinite blazing flames disappeared suddenly. The rushing sea also slowly calmed down. But there is a trace of extreme deep fear in this calm. The oppressive atmosphere made it hard to breathe. Mysterious eyes stared away. At some point, the figure of Pontos suddenly turned into a deep basin. It is like a huge container containing the boundless sea water of the entire ocean. This is the real body of Pontos. He and Uranus, the god of the sky, and Uriah, the lord of the mountains. They are all gods derived from the earth. Uranus and Uriah are the gods of celestial bodies and geology, and they are closely connected with the earth. Pontos itself is certainly not sea water. He is the god of the sea in a geological sense. It symbolizes the ocean basin carrying infinite sea water. Witness my true power. Pontos's bewitching face became distorted. The figure is infinitely dark and infinitely deep. Infinite and frightening terror, covering the vast ocean. At this moment, countless seawater was sucked into his boundless body violently. He is like a black hole. The body is endless, containing and devouring everything. Terrible darkness enveloped the second district of Phoros in an instant. In the cold and pitch black, endless pressure crushed him. They heard Pontos shout, "The power of the six seas, darkness without light." The sea battle is at its most intense moment. In the deepest part of the boundless land. In the majestic temple of Kaki. In a pale yellow dress, the plump and glamorous Earth Mother Gaia has a faint smile on her lips. It was a brutal fight, but the more you die, the better. Only the more you die, the more thoroughly my sacrifice can be completed to awaken Guigans. Nyx, you only know the filthy light of Guigans, which has a huge effect on the 9th level of the main god. But they don't know that if they fit together, they will condense into the source of pollution. Even the original is hard to resist. Quote, in the age of ignorance, Anthesius died at the hands of Uranus in this way. The roots were separated, became the sun and the moon, and were forged into the army of gods. Having said that, a cruel smile appeared on Gaia's glamorous cheeks. Sighed again. It's a pity that the waste of Uranus listened to the bewitchment of those three women, causing the Guigans to be sealed and wasting their combat power in vain. But now they will be mine again in no time. I will use them to take you, to defeat, to conquer the whole world. And that door of origin, chaos, you. Gaia was about to speak. Suddenly there was a sound outside. Dear Mother Earth, grandmother of the gods, your grandson Zeus comes to see you. Zeus, what is he doing here? Gaia frowned, and waved open the door of the dusty temple. The upright and majestic god King Zeus walked in step by step. Gaia lay sideways on her large throne, with a lazy posture, showing off her extraordinary style. With charming eyes, she asked, my mighty grandson, king of the gods, what have you come to me for? If it's okay, you can come and have a good conversation with grandma and me now. I stay under this earth alone, but I am extremely lonely. Fortunately, your brother Poseidon made me feel fuller than I have in a long time, but I think you will definitely be no worse than him. Quote. Gaia's seductive voice made Zeus pause. Fortunately, although he is romantic, he does not do things very rationally. He was even more afraid of the beautiful and fertile figure in front of him. Keeping serious, Ja stood in front of Gaia, and he whispered, Earth Mother, I am here this time to ask for your help. Is there anything you can ask me? Hey, you juniors, you only come here when you ask me for something. How can I usually care about my loneliness living here alone? Quote. Gaia seemed to be very dissatisfied and stretched, and sat up straight from the side-lying position. Then he said coldly, tell me, what is it? Mother Earth, you should know what happened on the Caucasus mountain before. I want you to help me find that fire thief. Zeus said bitterly. Gaia laughed sarcastically. You mean that not long ago, when you were beaten miserably, you were really the king of the gods that day, and you were really in a mess. Zeus' face became a little ugly. But he suppressed his dissatisfaction and asked the blood. I am indeed ashamed before the gods, so I beg you to help me find the fire thief. I can use his blood to wash away the shame. Quote, Gaia rolled her eyes. Slowly said, since you are so determined, then I can't help you. But I don't know the true face of the fire thief, I just wanted to find out his identity that day. I was stopped by Nyx, and now it is a little difficult to find him. Quote, Goddess Nyx prevented you from finding out the identity of the fire thief. Zeus' eyes flashed suddenly. Gaia nodded. That's it, who knows what that woman Nyx has to do with him. Then can you please help me see now? Are Prometheus in the ocean and Phoros fighting with Pontos similar to the fire thief? Zeus said with dark eyes. Gaia became interested. The beautiful eyes instantly crossed the boundless space and saw the battle situation of the ocean. The son of Iapetus, he has absolutely nothing to do with those people, I don't see any similarities between him. She said first. Not Prometheus, but what about his student Phoros? Zeus asked. Gaia glanced at Phoros, enveloped in the infinite darkness unleashed by Pontos. This young male god looks very handsome. Is he the son of Nyx? I don't feel like it. Pontos, darkness without light, blocked my sight, I can't see clearly. Mother Earth, take a look again. Zeus begged beside him. All the while, when he saw the god Phoros, there is a strange feeling in my heart. Made him very uncomfortable. Regardless of whether the other party has any relationship with the fire thief, he must investigate carefully. Urged by him, Gaia snorted coldly. But she was also a little curious. So increase the force of the root cause. Through the deep darkness. What a valiant young god, charging valiantly in the lightless darkness of Pontos. As for other things, Gaia was about to say something. His face changed suddenly, and he looked at the other side of the ocean with cold eyes. My core of the earth, who is it? This roar scared Zeus quite a bit. He didn't know what happened. Gaia, who was still peaceful just now, suddenly changed her face so much. Earth Mother, Phoros in the end. He still has to ask. Unexpectedly, Gaia swung the seat under her body violently, and threw it downward, just hitting him on the face. Go away, whoever destroys my core of the earth, I will kill him. Death, everyone will die. Terrible power of the earth. Instantly cover this huge temple. It is composed of mountains, basins, plains, and forest phantoms. With the anger of the Earth Mother, the majestic crushed in all directions. Zeus was caught off guard. In addition, the injury had not healed, and he was immediately sent flying out, vomiting blood incessantly. Gaia, even if you don't help me, you can't humiliate me like this. Getting up angrily, Zeus roared at the temple of the earth. Gaia inside is also extremely angry. She is getting angry and looking for a target to vent. Immediately a hand stretched out from inside. A vast phantom of the earth was condensed on it, and it hit Zeus on the head. The ridiculous god kings, Uranus and Cronus are just my puppets. What are you? Boom. Zeus was hit hard by the vast phantom of the earth. Kicked out of the ground with a bloody head. Gaia, one day, I will make you pay for what you did today. Embarrassed from the ground out, Zeus stared angrily at the secluded khaki temple below. Clenched hands tightly, suppressing inner anger. Before coming, he never mentioned it. I am the majestic king of the gods, and I will be directly beaten out. The shame, this hatred, it simply made him wish to smash the entire earth with lightning. Calm down, I want to calm down. Zeus kept telling himself. Compared with Gaia, the Earth Mother who single-handedly controlled the replacement of the gods in the past. He, the king of the gods, is still far behind. Now is not the time to break the conflict with Gaia. Gaia seems to have something important that was destroyed. What exactly was it, and who destroyed it? Is this incident related to this war breaking out in the ocean? After calming down, the God King carefully recalled the situation just now. Lost in thought, but he knew too little information. Can't think of a clue at all. Forget it, Gaia can't ask anything here for the time being. But Phoros, is there a problem with him? Caressing the wound on his face, Zeus turned back to Olympus. And after knocking Zeus out, in the dark and magnificent temple of the earth, Gaia also gradually calmed down. A pair of beautiful eyes, the power of the source is condensed, and it penetrates the boundless space. Looking out to sea towards Guigant's island. Not long after, she saw a deep night, appearing in her line of sight. Nyx, it really is you. Gaia gritted her teeth and growled. In the heavy night, countless gorgeous stars dotted the void, revealing tranquility and sleep. The graceful figure of Hecate faintly appeared in it. Holding the crushed earth core in one hand, he stared silently at Gaia. Acting in a borrowed body, coupled with the authority in the hidden domain, it's no wonder they can hide it from me. Gaia looked coldly at this old opponent who looked strange but had an extremely familiar aura. In the star-studded night, there is an indifferent voice. Gaia, your ambition is too great, and your means are too evil. Being discovered by me this time is your doomed catastrophe. Quote. Doomed disaster. Even the so-called fate was just a fool who was defeated by me back then. What can doom me to doom? The figure of Gaia appeared in that sea area. Composed of illusory light and shadow, not the real body. But for the original, the real body is everywhere, and the whole world is within the range of their real body. Destiny. You don't deserve to mention this name. Under the dense night, the graceful figure who blended into the night had a rare cold tone. But Gaia smiled. Nyx, I almost forgot that it was your son Moros who was in charge of fate with Moirai back then. Now there should be no gods who know the existence of your eldest son. Moros, the god of destiny, was once the #1 genius god in the age of ignorance. Although he didn't fall completely, it was no different from falling. There is also Moyilai, who split into 3 people, and I don't quite remember the past. But it's still annoying. Hear the pride in Gaia's voice. The graceful figure in the heavy night, with anger in his eyes. Because of you, the gate of ignorance was damaged, so Moros sacrificed. Now you're targeting the gate of origin again. But Father Chaos is not Moros and Moirai, and I won't make the same mistake a second time. With a sudden force in the palm, the crushed core of the earth instantly turned into fly ash. Nyx, possessed by Hecate, tapped his fingers lightly under the heavy night, revealing the islands of brightly colored soil. There are many sleeping Guigants on the island. Above the huge pool of blood, the heavy curtain of night forms a seal to the chaotic and strange space. These pictures came to Gaia's eyes and made her excited. But the next moment, the entire island, as if suddenly erased, disappeared forever between the worlds. Stop, my Guigants, my gate of origin. Gaia growled angrily. A vast phantom of the earth thundered towards the heavy night. But the graceful figure in the starry night. There is action one step ahead. The deep and quiet night is expanded and propped up. In the rumbling, it resisted the phantom of the vast land. Then a peaceful and quiet voice sounded. The so-called root law. The mystery is that on the basis of the root power of an existing field, a similar field can be derived. I use the power of the hidden domain derived from the root of the night to be as effective as the night domain of my main body. Quote. I just hid the entire island in the chaotic layer of time and space. Even if you kill me now, you will never find any trace of it. Lost is lost forever. Stop delusional, Gaia. Nay, K.S. The feeling just now, could it be that Gaia is spying on me again? In the deep darkness, the torrent was raging, and Phoros kept flashing his figure. Suddenly, he sensed the familiar peeping eyes, and he couldn't help but tighten his brows. Fortunately, it didn't take long. The feeling of being spied on is gone. Phoros wasn't in the mood to think about the outside world either. The figure kept flickering in the deep darkness. There was a terrible suction constantly covering him. There are also turbulent torrents, like swords, and then strike around. The situation is very strange. Pontos, come out and fight me if you have the guts. What is this now? Poseidon's roar suddenly came from afar. He was waving his trident frantically in the dark, looking for the trace of Pontos. Here the figure here, immediately holding the trident, rushed forward. Phoros had no choice but to shout, Neptune, it's me. Only then did Poseidon pause. Phoros, have you found any sign of Pontos? Phoros shook his head. We fell into this dark place together, and I think Pontos is hiding nearby by now. While talking, Phoros looked around vigilantly with mysterious eyes. Suddenly, he saw a blur of light and shadow. It's approaching quietly. Neptune, be careful, Phoros yelled loudly. Poseidon turned his head sharply. The trident in his hand caused monstrous waves. But long ago there was a sharp and majestic blue halberd, carrying layers of monstrous water potential. From the deep darkness, piercingly piercing. Boom. Halberd and halberd clash. The loud clanging sound shook all directions, and layers of darkness rippled endlessly. Poseidon froze. He coughed blood violently and retreated. Pontos made a surprise attack. He responded hastily, but he couldn't completely block it. Fortunately, Phoros came from the side immediately. The sacred light of the spiritual staff is a masterpiece. A series of sharp beams of light fell violently on Pontos' body. But at this time, the surrounding endless deep darkness. A terrible torrent burst out, and the dark mighty force from the depths bombarded the road of Phoros. Boom! The tyrannical force, the turbulent intercepted Phoros. The Pontos' trident danced, giving no respite in the darkness. Immediately followed by stabbing. Feel the majestic power. Phoros' eyes flashed lightly, like the solidity of mountains. He does not retreat but advances. Pontos, you are not hungry. The supreme heart throbbed in his chest. Phoros is fighting high. The strength of the whole body climbed to the extreme in the blink of an eye, and the wings of light and fire condensed and vibrated behind him. The spiritual staff releases brilliant light to disperse the surrounding darkness. Boom! The sharp and piercing trident collided with the crystal clear and slender staff. The power of Pontos seems to have been strengthened in this infinite darkness. The tyrannical impact made Phoros take a few steps back in an instant. A sweet throat spit out a mouthful of golden divine blood. Although under the effect of the blood of the undead, this injury quickly recovered. But Pontos' offensive did not stop. His figure is completely integrated with the infinite darkness and infinite depth. He was transformed into a huge basin containing an infinite sea. His capacity is endless. His power knows no bounds. The monstrous power of the sea came from his trident. Furious surge bombarded towards Phoros continuously. Bang bang, bang bang bang. Bo waved the spiritual stick, and the power of pound yards bloomed. In a short period of time, there were hundreds of fierce collisions with Pontos. He was beaten back and forth. Pontos is too powerful at the moment, not inferior to Zeus in the Caucasus mountain. Without using the King of Destruction, there is no support from the root formation. Phoros can't compete at all. But although the divine body retreated again and again, Phoros will never flinched. The supreme heart was throbbing in the chest with a load beyond the limit. And his eyes burst out with a strong will beyond the limit. The blood in the body boiled instantly. Phoros, I'm here to help you. Poseidon's voice came from behind. He swung his trident, wanting to be the main force against Pontos. Phoros did not cooperate. The spirit stick was still waving quickly. The supreme heart was beating with overload, and his strength increased to a level beyond the limit of the main god. You are looking for death, I will fulfill you. In the gloom, Pontos' roar shook the sky. Hit back Poseidon with a halberd. Countless torrents shook the sky. The deep darkness is completely integrated with his body, inseparable. He stabbed the earth-shattering halberd. And at this moment, Phoros also growled awesomely. That's it, bandit. In an instant, the blood in his whole body was churning to the extreme. This is not a description, but a real situation. A fierce battle between life and death. Under the monstrous pressure given by Pontos. His will, divine power, divine body, and authority have all been mobilized to the extreme. He was already only a tiny bit away from the 9th level of the main god. This moment, condensed into points. Apex of the gods. The spiritual staff slashed through the torrential water waves that swept across the sky. The tip of the staff released a monstrous cold light. Carrying tyrannical mighty power. Break through layers of darkness. Kyla pierced into the body of the original sea god. Tick, tick, the sound of blood dripping. It is audible in this darkness. In an instant, the boundless darkness fell into dead silence. And in the next moment, Pontos roared in shock. I was hurt by you. Phoros looked indifferent. The spiritual staff was withdrawn with a smear of blue blood. But it didn't stop there. Instead, it slides along the boundless darkness around it. Pontos, thank you for putting pressure on me and helping me surpass myself. As a thank you, I will break through this darkness without light, for you. Give your power of the 7 seas a chance to appear. Then, I will defeat the strongest you. The voice fell. The spirit stick tore through the endless darkness around it. The vast and boundless sea and sky reappeared in front of the three of them. See the outer ocean and sky again. Whether it is Pontus or Poseidon. Eyes are full of shock. Especially Pontos, watching Phoros hard. This is just a young god, who has been crushed by him all the time, so why does his strength suddenly jump? Stabbed himself, and easily break through the darkness without light. Poseidon was also puzzled. Before, although he knew that Phoros' strength was very good. But it is estimated that it is a powerful high-level main god. Until the battle with Pontos. Fang knew that the strength of this young god was not inferior to him, the emperor of the sea. And now, his body is showing a terrifying power beyond himself. How lucky is Prometheus to have such a student? 10 of them, can they beat this one student? Poseidon thought viciously. And on the other side, Phoros is still experiencing the state after being promoted to the 9th rank of the main god. Back in Guigance, because of the fall of his shadow body, he seized a chance to be promoted to the 9th rank of the main god. The 9th level of the main god, the apex of the god. Will, divine body, authority, and divine power are condensed into one point, unshakable. This is the highest level of the gods. Want to achieve, in fact, not only rely on talent and blood. One's own will also needs to be strong and tenacious. Strong pressure from Pontos. It is making his self, which has already reached the opportunity, get a breakthrough. Finally set foot on the pinnacle of God in one fell swoop. This is completely different from the feeling of reaching the 9th level of the main god relying on the increase of the supreme heart. He can feel it clearly. The divine body has undergone a transformation and sublimation from the inside to the outside, and even the spirit and spirituality. The grasp of authority and insight into the rules are also unprecedentedly clear. This is why can easily break through Pontos, darkness without light. Although he had the mysterious eye before, insight into the nature of all things in the world, but limited to his own personality and level, some things are hard to understand even if he sees them. Until he was promoted to the 9th rank of Lord God, standing at the height of the apex of the gods. Only with his mysterious eyes can he see more thoroughly. Found the weak point of darkness without light. Easily break through the power of the 6 seas that Pontos is proud of. You just said that you want to understand my power of the 7 seas and defeat the strongest me. Standing on the sea, Pontos looked a little pale. His long and narrow eyes locked coldly on the blonde young god. His chest was still dripping blue divine blood. The moment Phoros broke through, his strength completely surpassed the normal state. A spirit stick pierced his chest, injured this primitive sea god. Until now, there is no way to heal. But the blood that keeps dripping. It completely aroused the fierceness of this primitive sea god. His long and narrow eyes carried an unprecedented sternness. Firmly locked onto the young god with blonde hair and silver eyes. The trident was raised high. Facing the vast sea, it is still arrogance. At the beginning of this battle, I thought Poseidon would be the main opponent. But your performance completely exceeded my expectations. Quote, the power of the 7 seas is the 7 most powerful divine arts that I created in my life. No one has ever witnessed the power of this last move. Quote, today you will be lucky to be the first BHDJ deity to receive it. The voice just fell. The figure of Pontos once again turned into the deep and dark sea basin containing the boundless ocean. But this time it wasn't the boundless darkness that descended. Instead, the entire ocean began to vibrate along with his breathing. Poseidon's face was horrified. He's moving the whole ocean, all the water, all the power. How is this possible? Is he already the original? No one answered the Sea Emperor's shock, accompanied by the rumble of the ocean. The entire world connected to the ocean also began to oscillate crazily. The gods all over the world are terrified. What is Pontos doing, destroying the world? This seems to be a magical technique. He wants to kill the god of opportunity. Well, shouldn't it be killing the Sea Emperor? I do not know either. When the gods around the world were horrified by the horror caused by Pontos. More doubts. Isn't the purpose of this battle to decide the only king of the ocean? How did Pontos' arch-nemesis become the god of chance? Poseidon was obviously standing beside him. Could it be that Pontos thinks Phoros is stronger and more terrifying than Poseidon? The gods who don't know the situation in the darkness without light. I just thought it was Poseidon who wounded Pontos and broke through the darkness without light. Now it finally feels wrong. Could it be that the god of opportunity is the main force in the battle against Pontus, and his strength is still higher than that of the Sea Emperor? The gods couldn't believe the idea. Primitive Poseidon. Which one is not the strongest god who dominates the world? Phoros, god of chance. Although he has gained a great reputation recently, he is only a young god. To be able to fight side by side with Neptune is already unexpected. How could it be possible to still be above the Sea Emperor? Only Zeus, who had just returned to the God King Palace with a bruised face, was the only one. At this moment, his eyes are fixed, looking desperately at the ocean battle situation, Zigwang especially focused on Phoros. Even Hera, the Queen of God, who was surprised to see him come back with injuries all over his body, asked a question. He didn't answer, just muttered, "Phoros, let me see what kind of strength you have." The gods are watching. The figure of Pontos is integrated with the infinite ocean. The monstrous vibration stretched across the sky. Amidst the crashing sea water, his faint voice came from it. "The power of the seven seas, the power of the sea. If you and Poseidon can accept my move, today's battle will be your victory." Hi Gu. Chanting this name, Poros's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. With his own experience, in terms of pure power, Pontus may be worse than Zeus. Has not yet completely surpassed the main god, comparable to the original. But it is equivalent to Zeus, who can only use lightning to strike people when he fights, the rough and simple Zeus. Pontos's fighting skills and various magical arts are many grades higher. Of course, this is also because the first Sea Emperor lived a long time. It has been born since the Age of Ignorance. After 3 generations of shunting, there have been countless battles, big and small. Wisdom and experience accumulated over a long period of time. It is far from being comparable to the 3 generations of gods in the lower body of Zeus, who is obsessed with power. The first few seas of the power of the 7 seas. He has already witnessed that they are all very special and powerful divine arts. And this is the final 7th sea. It must be the most powerful blow that surpasses the former 6 seas. If you face it alone. In fact, Phoros does not dare to say that it is sure to win. He is now promoted to the 9th rank of Lord God. Plus the boosting power of the Supreme Heart. The strength can be considered beyond the category of the 9th level of the main god. But still inferior to Pontos. Fortunately, he is not alone. Glance. He saw Poseidon not far away. Tightly dignified face. The figure and the already vibrating endless seawater are closely blended. Take out the strongest posture. The Sea Emperor knows. Just take the final blow from Pontos. This ocean war ended with his victory. He will be the only king who rules the entire ocean. Come, Pontos. Waving the trident, Poseidon circled endless waves in the vast sea. At the same time through its own ocean authority. Contest Pontus for control of the ocean. This caused Pontos to mobilize the entire ocean and launch the power of Sea Universe, which was weakened. But finally, this move is still coming. Pontos melted into a deep, dark ocean basin. Appear in the void. A majestic suction instantly enveloped the entire boundless ocean. Under the pale eyes of the gods. At this moment, it is wider than the land, the vast and boundless ocean. Whether it is offshore or deep sea, or oceanic rivers. The boundless sea water, including creatures, reefs, and islands in the sea water, are all absorbed into the deep basin. The entire ocean, except for the many gods who exclaimed. Everything is absorbed. Be accommodated. A vast sea world. Floating in front of Phoros. Then, after the huge sea world appeared, it slowly formed the outline of a human figure. It looks a bit like Pontos. It swung its fist loudly and smashed down towards the bottom. The world is dead silent. The majestic blow of the vast ocean. Just a little movement. The whole world will tremble and shake. The surrounding void is even more like a spider's web, with black cracks exposed in fragments. An indescribably vast atmosphere, overwhelming the heads of the 2 Phoros. Like a tiny ant being hit by stars. Such power. On the empty sea, Poseidon held his trident tightly, staring at the monstrous shadow of his fist waving in the air. His body trembled a little, until the monstrous punch that contained the infinite ocean enveloped and approached. He just reacted. The trident unleashed its monstrous power and swung towards the sky. Boom! A huge trembling sound rippled through the void. The giant fist of the majestic sea that is as vast as the stars. And the small and fierce trident. Extreme collision. The disparity in contrast reflects the difference between the winner and the loser. Even though Poseidon fought hard, but Pontos condenses the entire ocean of infinity with one punch. A little shattered the space. Bring down the emperor of the sea from the void. Very tragic. At this time, another punch hit Phoros like a meteor. The supreme heart thumped. Phoros has raised his divine power to the extreme. The spirit stick erupts with mighty power. Against it. Boom! The huge collision sound shook all directions. The majestic giant fist of the sea is like thousands of mountains and thousands of stars. Thick and majestic to peerless. Rao is that Phoros, divine power surpasses the limit of the main god, in continuous collisions. Also losing ground. The infinite ocean accommodates it, and the silhouette of a human figure resembling the incarnation of the ocean utters a icy shout. The bombarding fist spread out suddenly. It turned into a big hand covering the sky, and it was photographed with a bang. This moment, the boundless ocean is like the sky falling down. The terrifying picture shocked the gods watching the battle. He only thought that the god of opportunity would be smashed into minced meat in the next moment. But Phoros' handsome face remained calm. The eye of mystery blooms with a brilliant light of insight into all things. He stared intently at the palms slapped from above. Look at the majestic figure formed by the ocean. Suddenly murmured, Hi Gu, Hi Gu. As this using its own authority to integrate all the authority and power of the ocean to form a mighty power that is close to the root and create a world of the sea. In an instant, he realized something in his heart. Regardless of the majestic giant palm in the sky, he patted him. The surging force shakes the void and shatters everything. Roaring, he yelled at Poseidon on the other side. As before, use your sea authority to fight him for control of the sea. Poseidon, who was also crushed by terror over there, was puzzled at first when he heard the words. But then he gritted his teeth and obeyed Phoros' words. Unleash your ocean authority and aim at the humanoid mark above. With the actions of Poseidon, the towering figure in the sky, like the world of the sea, froze suddenly. The palm on the top of Phoros' head was about to be photographed, and it also froze for a moment. Phoros grinned, taking advantage of this gap, quickly flashed to the distance. I guessed right. This is similar to the thunder and lightning world derived from Zeus on the Caucasus Mountains. This may be the reason why you are not the original, but you are all beyond the 9th level of the main god. Whispering inwardly, Phoros stared deeply at the majestic titan of the sea. Boom! Just experienced the accident. This towering human silhouette, which looks like the incarnation of the ocean, seems to be frightened and angry. Soon, he raised his arms again and slapped down fiercely. No Phoros reminder needed this time. Poseidon quickly launched his own sea power, affecting the boundless ocean contained above. The majestic humanoid silhouette froze again. But this time he also had expectations. Press your arms together towards the middle, leaving no gaps. Although Poseidon tried his best to influence, but it can only delay this action. But both he and Phoros were wrapped in layers of folded arms. It was about to be crushed to pieces. Phoros kept quiet, his eyes suddenly turned to the sky. Because the entire ocean is accommodated by Pontos, and under the leadership of Prometheus and Athena. The gods of the sea gathered together to watch the battle blankly. Use your ocean authority to control the corresponding ocean rules in Ponto. Phoros yelled at them. These sea gods looked at each other in surprise. Then immediately follow this command. Hundreds of sea gods. Facing the majestic giant humanoid silhouette one by one, they activated the corresponding ocean authority. These gods include the god of sea water, the god of sea wind, the god of sea surface, the god of seaweed, etc., covering almost all aspects of the ocean domain. When they both activate authority at the same time, the vast ocean contained and carried by Pontos suddenly shook in all aspects. The whole figure showed signs of collapse. The arms that were originally closed were smashed apart. Very well, give me more strength. Seeing this astonishing effect, Poseidon was overjoyed, and hastened to order the sea gods to increase their strength. Hear the command of the sea gods. Immediately, they exerted all their breastfeeding strength and tried their best to control the contained ocean. The huge humanoid silhouette gradually showed signs of collapse. Pontos, you are out of luck. Staring at the sky with mysterious eyes, Phoros sighed softly in his heart. He finally understood now. Those like Zeus and Pontos surpassed the 9th level of the main god, and their combat power was close to primitive, but they were not truly primitive. How exactly? Ordinary gods have their own authority and can leverage the laws of the corresponding domain. And when it reaches the 9th level of the main god, authority is integrated with will, divine body, and divine power. If you can touch the root at this time, you can sublimate yourself. It will be able to condense the power of the source and become the original god. The reason why the original god is above the gods. It is because ordinary gods have various extraordinary powers. It is caused by the laws of various fields in the world with the authority you have. But the original god is a part of the world, and can form a world of its own domain. They no longer depend on the laws and rules of the world itself. Instead, it can use the power of the root to derive laws, derive authority, and derive the world. Such as the Earth Mother Gaia. All laws, rules and authorities related to the Earth are derived from her roots. She is the absolute source, creator, of the realm of the Earth. With the roots of the Earth, a real Earth world can be formed. This is true primordial, but Zeus, Pontos, the 9th level of the main gods who didn't understand the root. But through another method, another way, it has also reached the level where the world of the corresponding domain can be formed. Such as Zeus. The world itself has many powers and laws corresponding to the field of thunder and lightning. Combined together, a world of thunder and lightning can naturally be formed. Although Zeus himself did not condense the root of thunder and lightning, he is the only god in the world who is in charge of the field of thunder and lightning. He gathered all the authority related to the field of thunder and lightning. This makes him not have the root of thunder and lightning. But it also completely controls the field of thunder and lightning, deriving the powerful ability of the electric world. In terms of combat power, it is not bad at all compared to the Yuan of Yuan. Because although the power of the source is profound and obscure, the original god must derive the corresponding authority from its own source to exert its power. More flexible at best, and lightning is one of the most powerful fields. Therefore, Zeus' combat power is comparable to that of the original. This level, if you insist on naming it, it can be called the 10th level of the main god. And the same goes for Pontus. He is the incarnation of the basin of the sea that carries the entire ocean, and he is born to forcibly accommodate and use all the authority of the ocean. Form the world of the sea. His misfortune is misfortune. The gods of the sea are too many, although he can forcibly use their authority. But the gods of the sea can also compete with him in turn. This is why he must unify the ocean. Only by completely unifying the oceans and concentrating authority on oneself. Only then can he fully reach the level of the 10th level of the main god. Before that, he could only be regarded as an incomplete 10th rank of main god. So the Phoros fought before. I felt that even though he surpassed the 9th level of the main god. But compared to Zeus, it is still worse. Because it is better than fate, there is no competitor Zeus in the field of thunder and lightning. The ocean realm is far from being unified by Pontus. He just relied on the characteristics of the ocean basin, barely surpassing the false 10th level of the 9th level of the main god. Only in the state of using high GU, he is the complete 10th level of the main god. But in this state, he is the strongest. It was also when he was weakest. These ant-like guys are able to force me to this point. In the endless and deep sea basin, a huge ocean with human silhouettes is constantly churning. Pontos' will was terrified, constantly want to control the huge sea world, to kill Phoros and Poseidon. But Poseidon and the sea gods, with the many powers of the sea, completely hindered his movement. The huge sea world is getting closer and closer to complete collapse. He was angry and helpless. In his original idea, although Poseidon is strong, it is not worth using the last high GU at all. And even if there are accidents, the strength of his own line of gods is also far superior to that of Poseidon. The gods under the seat of Poseidon. There is no chance of influencing yourself at all. But he didn't expect Phoros to appear. There will be powerful main gods such as Prometheus, Athena, and Nike. With Poseidon a series of weak gods. Defeat him the many powerful gods of the deep sea. When he had to use high GU, he also thought that it was impossible for anyone to quickly see the essence of its move. He who accommodates the power of the entire ocean. The combat power is completely comparable to the original. Enough to kill any opponent in a short time. But this Phoros, he saw right through himself. It shouldn't be, it's impossible. Pontos gritted his teeth and roared. Relying on its own powerful personality, difficult to stabilize the huge sea world. 957. He shakes his fist, bombarded towards Phoros again. But his movements were effected too slowly. When he just blasted out, the lanky figure of Phoros already appeared in another direction, looking at him faintly. Pontos, give up. When I see through the essence of this divine technique, you have already failed. Phoros, indifferent voice. It fell on Pontos' ear, which made him very angry, because he was more angry. Fail, how could such a noun appear on me? Boom. He manipulates huge humanoid silhouettes. He punched out again. But this time the target is no longer Phoros. Not Poseidon either. It was the gods of the sea who tried to influence him from afar. Die. The huge fist is like the sky collapsing. The turbulent pressure pressed Poseidon and other gods, large and small. These sea gods were frightened silly. They are not Phoros. The 9th level personality of the main god moves quickly. Pontos, who was affected, could not catch up with the attack at all. Most of these gods are middle gods and lower gods, and there are not many upper gods. Under the punch of Pontos, it was like the sky was falling. They are completely incapable of dodging. The face of Poseidon in the distance changed. Roaring and roaring. If you can't hide, influence him, don't let the fist drop. Hear the roar of Poseidon. The sea gods came back to their senses. In the horror of the sky collapsing, he gritted his teeth and urged his authority to an unprecedented level. The action worked quickly. The fist that Pontos slammed down became slower and slower. Even the whole arm showed signs of collapse. But at this moment Phoros frowned suddenly. In the sea world with human silhouettes in the sky above, a loud voice suddenly came. Nereus, help me, accompanied by the sound of Pontos shouting loudly. The other side of the sea. The gods of the deep sea who were beaten and fled. Under the leadership of Nereus, the eldest son of Pontus, the friend of the sea. Gather together, facing the collapsed sea world in the sky above, exert authority. These gods were also gods of the sea. Under the influence of their authority, they immediately offset the influence of many gods of Poseidon. The world of the sea, which showed signs of collapse, stabilized the airflow. That punch, like the sky falling, weighed down heavily. In this moment of crisis, stand among the line of gods of Poseidon. Athena, who was also enveloped by the sky collapsing punch, suddenly flew into the sky. She wears shining armor, heroic and sacred, showing solemnity. Behind her stands Nike, the goddess of victory with white wings. The same is full of blonde hair fluttering, glorious glory. Eye contact. Suddenly, the figures of the two of them appeared to overlap and overlap. The radiance is as bright as gold, swaying around them like the scorching sun. The wings of victory, accompany me. Athena let out a long drink. A sharp golden spear and a solid shield appeared in his hand. Nikki's figure completely overlapped hers. The white wings that symbolize victory appear on the tall and straight figure of the goddess of wisdom and war. For a moment, the gods felt it clearly. Athena's aura became extremely majestic. The 8th level personality of the main god, and the 9th level main god who reached the apex of the gods in the blink of an eye, are still climbing. Bathed in brilliant and sacred golden glory, her figure turned into a ray of light and rushed into the sky. The shield blocks the front. The golden spear pierced straight out. A brilliant ray of light pierced directly into the palm of the giant fist in the sky. Boom! There was a huge roar. The rippling ocean and sky. Athena's magnificent and bright spear. With the huge fist that collapsed like the sky, a huge hole appeared with a bang. Thousands of sea water splashed out. And in the distance, the figure of Phoros also quickly flashed near the remaining gods of the deep sea gods. You guys should stop. Looking at the gods of the deep sea who were still trying their best to help Pontos, he said indifferently. Nesance, the friend of the sea, gritted his teeth and roared, "You can't stop us from helping Father." Saying that, this sea god of the 6th rank of the main god strived to pour out the thick and powerful divine power, and blast towards Phoros. But at this moment, the entire ocean was sucked away by Pontos. The gods of the seas lost home court advantage. The strength plummeted. The attack he sent out was not as powerful as the main god's low-level gods. Phoros shook his head slightly. The spiritual staff spewed out a brilliant light beam and knocked him down with one blow. Then a monstrous chill permeated the air. The gods of the deep sea, including Nessans, will freeze the captives. This smooth and swift movement let the gods watching the battle from all over the world click their tongues. And after doing this, Phoros quickly flew into the sky. The spirit staff released a series of sharp rays of light, striking the silhouette of a human figure in the distance. Inside, Athena merged with the figure of the goddess of victory. It is also vibrating the white wings. Sliding between the huge fists of Pontos, the bright light streaked through smooth arcs. The two figures cooperate in an orderly manner. Although they are not in the same place, they complement each other. From different angles, shake the huge human silhouette that holds the ocean. All the gods who saw this stunning picture all sighed. Goddess Athena really deserves to be the most outstanding goddess of the new generation of Olympus. I didn't expect that she could fuse with the goddess of victory and explode with such amazing power. I used to know that the goddess of victory was her subordinate god, but everyone thought it was inappropriate. But looking at it now, they should be born as one. Goddess of wisdom and war, goddess of victory, combined together, is truly invincible. Hey, where did you put the god of war, your highness Ares? Ares, who doesn't know now, he, the god of war, is only responsible for fighting. If you want to win, you have to find the goddesses Athena and Niji to be reliable. I heard this, god of war, stock that has been popular in shunting recently. All the gods watching the battle couldn't help laughing. There is a cheerful air both inside and outside the battlefield. After laughing, they talked about Phoros. Compared to the goddess Athena, don't you think the god of opportunity is more amazing? Goddess Athena needs the assistance of goddess Niji to shake the original sea god. And the god of opportunity easily captured Nenasans and other gods of the deep sea, and it was also easy and casual to charge outside. Previously, when Pontus faced him and the Sea Emperor, he obviously paid more attention to him. Yes, he stood with the goddess Athena, and I seemed to see the two brightest morning stars in the court of God. Don't tell me, god of opportunity and goddess Athena are so similar in many places. I wonder if he is the illegitimate son of the god king. Oh, if the mother of the god of opportunity is another goddess, I will definitely believe it. But the god of opportunity is the child of goddess Nyx, and our god king should not have the ability to be the father of the god of opportunity. Quote, the gods are all over the ocean. Two holy figures intertwined brilliantly, chattering endlessly. Zeus in the temple of the king of Olympus. His face was very serious and gloomy. Pontos is indeed the same as me. He has managed to gather the power of an entire field to form a level corresponding to the world. Although it's not perfect, it's still beyond the 9th level of mind wandering. But Phoros, the real surprise. The strength of the 9th level of the main god, the outbreak of combat power even faintly surpassed the 9th level of the main god. The wisdom and vision are equally astonishing, and it is easy to discover the details of Pontus. No, I absolutely cannot let him wander outside and be used by Poseidon and Hades. Speaking of the last sentence, Zeus raised his voice very high. Hera, who was next to her, was startled. Zeus, you say you can't leave Phoros in exile. The faces of the gods were a little suspicious. She also heard the words of the outside gods. Take a closer look, how similar the two divine figures shining above the ocean are in some respects. My husband, wouldn't he really have a relationship with the goddess Nyx? But she quickly dismissed the idea. It was not unusual for her husband to do such a thing. But the goddess Nyx has always been holy and cannot be slandered. After thinking about it, she said to Zeus, if you want to take Phoros for your own use, isn't there a vacancy for the position of the main god in Olympus now? He is second only to Hades in Hades, and Poseidon has just promised the position of vice lord in the ocean. One of the main gods of Olympus may not attract him enough. Zeus shook his head. Hera rolled her eyes at this moment. Since the position of a main god is not attractive enough to be, how about adding the most brilliant goddess of Olympus? All the gods say that he is a good match for Athena. Why don't you betroth her to him, so that you will be kissed? Zeus was taken aback by the proposal. Athena has sworn a long time ago that she will be a virgin like Sister Hestia. But didn't she also say, absolutely obey your orders? Hera looked at her husband with a faint smile. You said. Didn't you always feel that her loyalty to you might just be a disguise? Then try it this time, how much she obeys you. Can your order override her personal honor or disgrace? Zeus stared blankly at the graceful wife in front of him. After a while, he said, the gods say that you have a close relationship with my daughter, and there is no quarrel. It seems they are wrong, you have been just pretending to like her. Haha, how can a wife like her husband and other people's children? And I'm not trying to harm her, but out of good intentions, to choose a husband who is good enough for her. She should thank me, a beautiful and dignified queen. Smiling lightly, she cast her eyes on the ocean, her white wings shining on the sacred, heroic and dignified goddess. Zeus fell silent. It seems to be really considering whether this matter is feasible. At this time, his face suddenly changed when he looked at the ocean battle situation. Like seeing something scary. Crash. Wow. Countless turbulent water flows poured from the sky, refilling the hollow ocean. A handsome figure with blonde hair and silver eyes, and a shining goddess with white wings and heroic hair. The sacred radiance complements each other. Pontos' majestic body was shaken a little bit, and lost the interference of Nereus and other gods of the deep sea. Poseidon leads the gods of the sea. Continuously affects Pontos. Finally, the majestic and huge silhouette of the vast human figure that accommodates the entire ocean. Rapid collapse. The endless sea water, like a galaxy falling from the sky, rumbled into the hollow sea. The torrent of water splashed continuously. The surge lasted for a long time. When the whole sea is refilled, the deep and dark sea basin can no longer be maintained. The pale figure of Pontos was torn apart again. I lost like this. This primitive sea god with a monstrous appearance and long and narrow eyes. His whole body was in a state of embarrassment and his face was pale. It barely stood on the sea surface with the support of a trident. He stared at Poseidon, who was surrounded by laughing. Pontos, since you know you've lost, then accept your fate obediently, and spend the rest of your life in Tartarus when you are ready. Poseidon is proud of the spring breeze, and he is approaching the decadent Pontos day by day. The latter bit his lip and sneered. Poseidon, what are you? If you are alone for 17 days today, how can you beat me? Poseidon's face turned cold at Pontos' ridicule. He snorted and said, no matter how we win, the gods will only know that I, Bo-Handong, am the only sea emperor in unity. And you, Pontos, are but a loser who was cast into Tartarus. Just like Uranus and Cronus. Growling, Poseidon's trident waved and stabbed towards Pontos violently. Clang. Pontos struggled to lift the trident in the same way. Defend against Poseidon's offensive. The two artifacts symbolizing the sea Wong Quan fought fiercely together on the open sea. In the interlacing of figures, the fight was evenly matched. Because of the use of high GU, Pontos consumed a lot, and was hit by Poros's spiritual staff before, and his injuries were not light. The state is no longer at its peak. And Poseidon is also fighting again and again. Injuries and losses are not small, but it still retains 50 to 60% of its combat power. The two kings are having a final duel. Although it is not as grand as before, it is still extremely fierce. Poros, Athena and others watched the battle silently without intervening. But the war situation continues. Pontos, who was almost exhausted, remained undefeated under the continuous offensive of Poseidon. There is even a tendency to suppress the opponent in turn. Poseidon finally couldn't help but shouted, Poros, give me one last helping hand. He glanced at the Neptune with a bit of contempt. Poros didn't say anything either. Raise the spirit stick to join the battle. Pontos, who was in the midst of the battle, turned to him sadly. If it wasn't for you, I would never have lost today. Poros did not echo his words. In fact, he also felt that Pontos was more like a sea emperor than Poseidon. But he promised Poseidon to help him defeat Pontos. This is his promise. The spirit stick beam spews out. The divine light poured down on Pontos. No matter how difficult it is for the original sea god to stand still, it is gradually difficult to parry Poseidon's offensive. Poros approached slowly. Poros, I would rather be defeated by you than lose by Poseidon and imprison Tartarus. Pontos suddenly laughed. With a determined face, he turned towards Phoros. A generation of sea emperors, ready to usher in their own end. And at this moment, an ice-cold roar rose from the depths of the sea. Pontos, someone wants me to save you. The cold voice, with monstrous hostility. Just words. Phoros felt an unprecedented terrifying evil spirit. It seems to be the embodiment of destruction. Synonymous with filth. It was born to subvert everything that exists in this world. The gods were horrified and saw it clearly. In the depths of the vast sea. I don't know when a terrifying and huge hideous figure appeared. He seems to have a tall body like a Titan Atlas. Only half of the body appeared. Just cover half of the sky and make the world dark. The whole body is filled with terrible green liquid, flowing like magma. He has a pair of broad bony wings on his back. In addition to the main head above the head, there are also a whole 100 ugly and hideous snake heads hovering. 200 eyes, all with a terrifying cold light. When he appeared, twilight quietly appeared in the whole world. Like the most terrifying twilight of death, it is about to cover the universe. Subversion dry cutting. The laws of the world vibrate. The authority of the gods is shaking. Just staring at his figure. The indescribable fear surfaced in the hearts of the gods like a poison. Makes people shudder. Top of Olympus, Zeus, who had just noticed his arrival, changed color in horror. Slowly call out his name. Typhon, father of all monsters, Typhon. On the open sea, Phoros also frowned, staring intently at the suddenly terrifying figure. For this famous horror monster. He also paid attention early on. But I didn't expect to meet him in the battle of the sea. Typhon wants to save Pontos, is it Gaia's meaning? Thoughts turned sharply. Phoros made a judgment. Pontos and Typhon have any common relationship. That is, they are all sons of Gaia. While he was thinking, Typhon's 200 eyes that were shining with cold light had already locked onto him coldly. Not far away, Pontos also appeared because of this vitality. Quickly go out. Poseidon roared to pursue. Boom. The father of the 100 demons vibrated with a pair of bone wings. The gigantic figure was unparalleled in speed, spanning a long distance in the blink of an eye. A miserable green light beam rolled over. The surrounding space instantly dissolves under this light beam. Phoros, Poseidon, and Athena dare not be careless. Wave the artifact in your hand to unleash majestic power. Resist the terrifying power of Typhon. Boom. There was a muffled loud noise. The entire void suddenly exploded. The terrible aftermath stopped all pursuit. Typhon's huge figure grabbed Pontos on the sea. At the same time, 100 heads spit out green beams of light. Leave Pontos. Poseidon roared furiously, and the trident mobilized the sea. The turbulent pierced towards Typhon in the sky. But Typhon only had 200 eyes, and he glanced at him lightly. The majestic body bursts out with great strength. He staggered backwards with one blow. Brother of Zeus, nothing more. The father of all monsters sneered lightly. At this time, Phoros and Athena looked at each other. At the same time, a sacred and magnificent light bloomed on his body. The spiritual staff and the radiant spear thrust out at the same time. In two different orientations, complement each other. Assault on Typhon. The thick, miserable green light beam, as if being ignited in an instant, made a hissing sound. It was forcibly broken through by the two. The expression of the father of all monsters finally changed. Cold voice. You two are not bad. But still, not enough. The muffled and noisy voice suddenly reverberated across the vast sky. Typhon has 100 ferocious snake heads, and Shinzi spits out. Once again, a terrible green light beam overflowed violently. Spread like a tide throughout the void. Feel the horror of this attack. Phoros and Athena dodged to the sides. When you come back to your senses. The huge figure of the father of all demons was hidden in the miserable green light. I don't know where to go. Among the many gods watching the battle, none of them discovered how he left. It's like no one knows how he suddenly appeared. For so many years, such a huge body is hidden in some corner of the world. Typhon came and went strangely. Only an icy voice echoed in the sky and ocean, making the gods tremble with fear. Zeus of Olympus was livid. This time, save people. Next time, mire the gods. On the empty sea, the miserable green light pervaded for a long time, and finally disappeared slowly. Looking at the direction where Typhon disappeared, Poseidon's face was gloomy. Although he won the battle, Pontos was rescued. There will be troubles if the guarantee is not complete in the future. The other gods, including Phoros, cared more about what Typhon left behind when he left. Is the father of all monsters ready to start a war against the gods? This worries all the gods. They have seen the horror of Typhon before. No god dared to ignore his threats. And why did Typhon come to rescue Pontos? If there is any relationship between Typhon and Pontos, there is undoubtedly only one aspect. Earth Mother Gaia. Typhon wants to fight against the gods. Is there also the grandmother of the gods who is behind it? Think about it. All the gods who paid attention to the situation of the ocean battle turned pale. Perhaps there are gods who are not afraid of Typhon. I thought it was just an ugly monster. All it takes is a flash of lightning from the king of the gods to kill him. But who dares to underestimate Mother Earth, the grandmother of the gods? What's going on recently? First, there was the incident of the fire thief, then there was a fierce battle in the ocean war, and now Typhon is about to make trouble. All the gods are secretly sighing bad luck. It seems that since the king of the gods launched the great flood that destroyed mankind, in less than 100 years, all kinds of turmoil occurred frequently inside and outside the court. More and more chaotic and dangerous. The mind was confused, and the gods slowly withdrew their eyes from paying attention to the ocean. Phoros and Athena came to Poseidon. Seeing that the Sea Emperor still had a gloomy expression, Athena and Nikki released the combined state, and said with a dignified and polite smile, "The outcome of the ocean war has been decided. His Majesty Poseidon will become the master of the ocean. It shouldn't be such a sad expression now." Only then did Poseidon ease his face, and smiled bitterly at her and Phoros. "Thanks to your help this time, especially Phoros, otherwise I would definitely not be able to defeat Phoros. It's a pity that Pontos was rescued, and I'm afraid there will be big troubles in the future." Quote. Phoros reassured, "Your Majesty the Sea Emperor, why worry too much, now you are the master of the sea. The deep sea god system has been defeated, even if Pontos is not dead, but even if he returns, what can one person do? Neptune Emperor, you can defeat him for the first time, and you can naturally defeat him for the second time." Phoros' sonorous words. Hearing Poseidon is very comfortable, although it feels that Phoros' words are not quite right. But he nodded again and again. "Phoros, you were right, after all, we won the war. Although Pontos is alive, he is still a loser, so don't worry about it." He said to Phoros again, "You have contributed the most to this war. I will make you my vice prince according to my previous promise, and share the ocean with me." "Your Majesty Poseidon, is this inappropriate? I am the god of the underworld," Phoros whispered. "What's wrong with that? The goddess who came to contact me for you last time, the daughter of Asteria. I remember that she is the vice lord of Hades, but she also has priesthood with me and Zeus. She has this qualification, of course you are more qualified." Poseidon grabbed Phoros' hand with a look of absolute refusal. Phoros also agreed. In fact, he understood that Poseidon was afraid that Pontos would come back again, and he couldn't deal with it himself. Now tie the relationship with yourself first, so that you can ask for help later. And the reason for mentioning Hecate. But he had another hint. "I think you, Phoros, should go with Hecate. Each of the major camps in the god court holds the priesthood, and their status is detached, rather than being the leader of a certain camp alone. You see, it's time to speak. Brother Phoros, from the beginning I saw that the daughter of goddess Asteria was very concerned about you. The two of you are indeed a good match, but you only now have the priesthood between me and Hades, which is a bit worse than her." Quote. Poseidon put his arms around Phoros' shoulders, looking kindly, voice soft, and said, "Didn't my brother Zeus invite you to Olympus last time? When I unify the oceans, I will take you to Olympus. There just happens to be a vacancy for the position of Lord God, so I have to ask for it for you." Quote. Phoros glanced at him, nodded and said, "Then thank you, Neptune." Poseidon patted him on the shoulder in satisfaction. The reason why he wants to do this. It is this battle that has seen the strength of Phoros. Although he wants to keep Phoros in the ocean, as a booster. But he knew that his strength might not be as good as the young god in front of him. If the other party really stayed, they might be overwhelmed by the guests in the future. But he couldn't bear to lose this combat power, and in the future faced a powerful enemy like Pontos, he would lose his helping hand. That's why I came up with this trick of recruiting the three major factions of shunting to serve at the same time. In this way, Phoros will neither stay in the ocean and overwhelm him in the future. It can also be regarded as the god of the ocean, who goes to ask for help when necessary. Poseidon's calculations were clinking. Phoros knew what he was thinking. The reason why he agreed so readily. It's because Pallas once said that after capturing the oceanic gods, the entire ocean will be conquered. Now that Pontos has been defeated, apart from the oceanic god system, there is naturally only Bo Bingdong left. Having a priesthood of the ocean will undoubtedly make it much easier to do this in the future. Poseidon thought he was taking advantage. Little did he know that Phoros also wanted to turn his face and annex him. Although the two had just fought side by side. But after all, it was just a transaction, without any real friendship. Phoros never knew. His goal is to overthrow the Olympus god court, which is composed of Zeus as the core, Poseidon and Hades as supplementary. Whether it is Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades, they are all his enemies. Now approach the enemy. It's all for the sake of defeating them later. Did Zhao think of Pallas and the oceanic gods? Phoros said to Poseidon, Your Majesty the Sea Emperor, since the Pontos lineage has been defeated, do you want to attack the Lord of the Ocean now? Don't tell me, I was so happy that I almost forgot that old guy, Arnold's. Poseidon patted his head, resentment suddenly appeared on his face. At the beginning, he made a covenant with me to fight against Pontus, but then he suddenly backed out. Otherwise, how could today's battle be so dangerous? While scolding, Poseidon called two gods. Come on, let me go to the ocean god department and convey the will. Restrict Arnold's to surrender to me within 3 days, or I will lead people to destroy him. The two gods led the way. Poseidon brought many gods with him. Clean up the battlefield in a mighty way, and then go back to celebrate with a feast. He has no idea. At this moment, a great change is taking place in the ocean god system. The battle between Pontus and Poseidon is over. Inside the vast ocean and rivers. On the temple carved out of crystal. The master of the ocean and rivers, Arnold C. Still staring blankly. Pontos was defeated, Poseidon won the war. The white-haired and burly god of oceans and rivers only came back to his senses after a long time. Take out what you asked your son to write earlier. Surrender to Pontos. Immediately shouted angrily. Hurry up and change it. The god who wrote said timidly. Actually, there is no need to change it, just change the name of Pontos to Poseidon. What do you know? OCE Arnold's was anxious and shouted angrily on the spot. Pontos has a haughty personality and doesn't care too much about the past with me. But Poseidon is different, he is selfish and stingy. If he doesn't write more humble in the surrender book, he will definitely make trouble for me. No, the letter of surrender is not enough. Which of your younger sisters is more beautiful? If it is selected, I will take it to Poseidon to admit my mistake. Quote. Russia engraves Arnold's attitude. Let the gods of the ocean below have humiliation on their faces. At this time, the tall Acosta came in with two brothers. Father God, let me handle the matter of surrendering to Poseidon. He saluted OCE Arnold's. The two brothers behind him brought a cup of sea tea. This is the Haitian tea prepared by my mother for stabilizing spirituality. You should drink a cup first. You have been in a bad mood for the past few days. Arnold's looked at the son in amazement. Among his many sons, this is the one with the straightest temper, who doesn't know how to advance or retreat. Have you become so knowledgeable today? Instead of blaming yourself for what you did, you want to help yourself share your worries. With such wonder, OCE Arnold's reached out to take the sea tea brought by his wife. Hey, why does the taste feel different from usual? Arnold's was a little surprised, but didn't think much about it. Drink up the tea in one gulp. Then he said to the son below, Acosta, you are the main god who is rare among my sons. It would be best if you take care of the surrender yourself. He didn't finish his sentence. Acosta below interrupted him. Father God, in fact, everything except surrender is left to me. I think you should hand over all the affairs of the Oceanic God Department to me. After all, you are getting old now, because the Western God Department needs a young person in charge. Quote. Acosta's words. The gods in the temple were startled. The Russian Arnolds above jumped up even more angrily. Asshole, you know what you're talking about. The Ocean Lord's curse was just halfway through. It stopped abruptly, and fell on the throne as if he lost his strength. A pair of cloudy eyes, fixedly staring at the leftover cup in hand. This tea, the highest purity eclipse water, I have given a full 20 times the dose. Acosta, with a hard face, slowly raised his head. His eyes met the Father God above without any waves, and the corners of his mouth were full of smiles. Nizi, come, someone, take him down. Arnold's eyes almost burst into flames. Weakly command the gods below. It was only then that the many gods in the great hall came to their senses from the shocking changes in front of them. Looking at each other, only a few gods jumped out quickly. Acosta, you dare to plot against Father God. Under the suspicious and hesitant eyes of other ocean gods. Several oceanic gods who were loyal to Arnolds of Arnolds were about to charge up with roars. But Acosta was followed by two brothers, Alpheus and Cairo. Arms drawn early in the morning. Swiped to stop them. Several gods were no match for these two, and they were chopped down to the ground with 2 blows. At this time, there was a loud noise outside. There are many gods wearing armor and holding weapons. Surrounded the ocean temple, and took down the guards outside. The remaining gods of the ocean in the great hall. They were all terrified by this picture. Some of them recognized the gods that surrounded the temple. The armor they wear is the armor of the former Titans and the Palace Legion. It was commanded by the brain of the Titans, the god of war strategy, the most elite army of the Titan god court. The ocean gods are because of the large number of gods. There were more than hundreds of gods who were called to join the legion. Later, the court of Titans was destroyed. Because the oceanic gods hedged their bets in the war, these people were able to retire and return. At this moment, they all put on their battle armors again and took up their weapons. Exuding the fierce and evil spirit of the tiger and wolf master. Coldly surrounded the entire temple. Compare these elite gods who participated in the Titan War. The other gods in the oceanic pantheon, who are almost always in a state of peace, are like sheep. Being stared at did not dare to move at all. Ah, Acosta, what are you going to do? Finally, a god tremblingly asked Acosta above. Doing what? Acosta turned sharply, shouted at them, my brothers and sisters, I will not tell you lies. I, Acosta, want to rebel against Arnold's today. I want to replace this decaying ocean god with a new master. This straightforward words, it shocked the ocean gods below. The eyes of Arnold's almost spit fire from above. Rebel, how could I? Didn't see. You have such ambition. He collapsed on the crystal throne. He tried his best to let out an angry howl. But just after saying a few words, black blood spewed out. Father God, although the eclipsing water is powerful. But for the 9th level of the main god whose will, divine power, authority, and divine body are all condensed into one point, it shouldn't have such an effect. Acosta shook his head suddenly and said lightly. It's because you are old, corroded by comfort and extravagance, you no longer have the tenacious will of the past, and your spirit is loose. If you can't maintain the strong personality of the 9th level of the main god, you will be tricked. This is also the reason why you don't dare to participate in ocean wars, because you can't beat Pontos or Poseidon at all, and you don't dare to expose your weakness bhdh. His son brutally revealed the truth. The Lord of the Ocean, who collapsed on the throne, trembled all over. He raised his arms with difficulty, trying to say something. But only the black divine blood spit out. Acosta ignored him. He raised his arms and roared to the ocean gods below. After so many years, you should understand. Our Father God, he is a weak and incompetent coward, and the courage that belongs to the king has long been washed away by time. He is not worthy to be the master of the oceanic gods. With his arms raised high, his words were powerful and contagious. He added, everyone knows that there are 6,000 gods in my oceanic lineage, but in the eyes of God the Father, we are all his tools. The son stayed by his side to command, and the daughter married out to marry. Just now, he wanted to give our sister to Poseidon as a gift, as a surrender chip. Pointing to Arnold's who was full of resentment behind him, he was impassioned. My oceanic gods shouldn't be like this, we are one of the 3 major camps of the ocean, and our strength is not inferior to Poseidon at all. But it is because of our Father God, because of OCE Arnold's, that we have come to where we are now. We can't continue like this, we can only change all this with a new master of the ocean. After listening to Acosta's words, there are many ocean gods in the hall. Looking at each other, each of them was shaken. Because what Acosta said was exactly what they had been vaguely aware of all along. But none of them had the guts to say it. And now, Acosta took the lead, giving them courage. Look at their expressions. Acosta finally said, "My mother and other rebellious brothers and sisters outside have also been controlled by me. Any of you who want to join me, raise your hand." The voice fell. One arm in the hall slowly raised. OCE Arnold's collapsed on the throne. Closing his eyes, he murmured while spitting out blood. "Neezy. All or naughty." Then he was ordered by Acosta. "Seal the divine power and send it to the remote palace behind the temple to be imprisoned." Acosta incorporated the gods of the ocean who followed him, incorporated. Soon, he completely mastered the entire ocean god system. At this time, he came to a small hidden island in the vast ocean river. Pallas, with a haggard face, was waiting for him with a smile. "Acosta, you are doing well." Pallas' ravine-like face gave out approval. In Acaste's eyes, it was so exciting. He lowered his head and said frantically, "Master Pallas, you planned all of this well." Pallas didn't tell him much. Said in a low voice, "Right now, Poseidon has just defeated Pontos. It is not appropriate to confront him head-on, you follow the previous plan. To express to him that the oceanic pantheon is willing to surrender, and to show sincerity, Arnold's voluntarily abdicated. In this way, you can justifiably become the new lord of the ocean." Quote. "I see." Acosta nodded repeatedly. Pallas patted him on the shoulder. He said in a low voice, "You are a subordinate brought out by me, I believe in your character. But power can make people lose themselves, temporarily becoming the master of the ocean, you must be vigilant." His dark eyes stared deeply into the sky, warning. "Including the ocean gods, the entire ocean, I will dedicate it to the new king of this world in the future. Piece of new existence. If you covet this bit of power, I will be the one who will take off your head with my own hands in the future." Acosta, who had just become the de facto lord of the ocean, knelt on the ground tremblingly. "Lord Pallas, please believe in my loyalty to you." "Loyalty to me? No, it's not me you should be loyal to. Forget it, you don't know him yet." Pallas shook his head quietly. In the vast ocean, he raised his head and looked into the distance. "Although I just met him not long ago. But I believe that he is the one I have been waiting for many years, who can change the court of God." Quote. "This conclusion may be a bit arbitrary, but like my daughter, I like to judge people by their feelings. Fortunately, my judgment is generally as correct as hers." Quote. "What? Eric Arnolds agrees to surrender. In order to express his sincerity, he also voluntarily abdicated and let his son Acast become the new lord of the ocean." Heard the news. Poseidon's first reaction was disbelief. The many sea gods in the hall also had shocked faces. But the faces of the two gods who surrendered were full of determination. "His Majesty, this matter is true. When we went, sat on the ocean throne. It is already His Royal Highness Acosta, the new lord of the ocean." Quote. Ocean Arnold's was never there. According to the gods in the ocean, it seemed that he felt relieved after abdicating, and he went on a trip with His Royal Highness Typhon. Seeing the two subordinates so swear by the guarantee. Although Poseidon found it incredible, he gradually believed it. OCE Arnold's, this old guy, was willing to let go of the power in his hand, abdicated and left. "It seems that I underestimated him before." Quote. Bohantu murmured as he looked at the surrender letter from the ocean gods handed over by his two subordinates. "There are sea gods flattering below. In my opinion, this is the old guy Arnold, who knows the power of the sea emperor to dominate the sea. I am so timid that I dare not see you again. That's why I escaped in this way." Quote. Hearing this, Poseidon was very proud. Sitting on the throne, he waved his hands and said, "I had to settle the old accounts with this old guy. But since he is so knowledgeable, let's not bother with him for the time being." Quote. Then he said to the two gods, "Take this letter of surrender that I replied to the ocean god department. Tell the newly appointed Acast to come see me some other day. In the future, he is not allowed to be called the Lord of the Ocean, he is just the god of the ocean." Quote. The two gods took the surrender letter and left the Sea Emperor temple. Afterwards, many sea gods congratulated Poseidon on the surrender of the ocean gods. Since then, the three major gods of the ocean have been completely unified by Bo-Handong. Enjoy the worship of the gods. Sitting on the throne, Poseidon was full of smiles and complacency. Phoros, Prometheus, and Athena, who were sitting not far from the throne, couldn't help shaking their heads. This sea emperor was still humble and cautious before. The war has just ended now. The whole person was in a trance, completely forgetting how much he won this battle. The three of Phoros looked at each other. They care more about the affairs of the oceanic gods. O.C.E. Arnold's, the Lord of the Ocean, suddenly abdicated and was replaced by his son Acast. This is absolutely inseparable from Pallas, who just recently claimed to have seized the oceanic god system. While attending the banquet, they were thinking about it. At this moment, Athena's face suddenly changed. Standing up, he said to Poseidon, "Your Majesty the Sea Emperor, Father God conveyed his will to me. Let me congratulate you on the dominance of the ocean, and let me go back and report on this time." Quote. Poseidon stopped the wine glass in his hand. "Since Zeus asked you to go back, then I won't keep you, goddess of wisdom. Please, turn around and convey my regards to him." Quote. Neptune's meaning, "I will definitely bring it." Athena saluted, and then looked at Phoros. "Father God also asked me to invite the god of opportunity to visit Olympus together." Poseidon's face changed slightly, and he sat on it and said with a smile, "Brother Phoros, you can see that my brother and I have a good temper. I just said earlier that I would take you to Olympus and ask him for the position of the main god, but now he directly invites you to go." Quote. "Oh, so the god king invited me to Olympus for a reward. Then I have to go." Quote. Phoros stood up with a smile and saluted Po-Handong. He has seen it. After the war Poseidon kind of didn't want him in the ocean. "I am afraid that this is a powerful young god who has performed amazingly in previous wars. Steal the limelight from his sea emperor." Phoros himself had no feeling for the pimple of the ocean, and immediately left along the slope. Poseidon pretended to stay a few words. Finally, reluctantly, sent him away. But Prometheus stayed. Zeus just attacked him not long ago, and he must not go to Olympus now. There is still a little bit of safety in the ocean. Poseidon happily accepted the famous prophet of the court. Also asked him to be his god. The emperor of the sea doesn't know. Prometheus stayed behind in order to cooperate with Pallas in the future and make a nail into his heart. Out of the sea emperor temple, Phoros flies in the sky with Athena and Nike. Phoros asked Athena, "Zeus invites me to Olympus now, what do you think, sister?" Athena smiled. "I think it's the same as what Poseidon said, I want to confer you a god. Otherwise, how can he rest assured that a powerful god of the 9th level of the main god is not in the establishment of Olympus? I think besides the god position, maybe the god king will also give you a goddess." Niki pouted suddenly. The god king himself is merciful everywhere, and he always feels that other gods are the same as him. I have always thought that bestowing a marriage on the male god is the best way to win over. Phoros, you have to pay attention, don't be blinded by beauty, my Xiaoya is still here. Just as she was about to speak with a smile, she was interrupted by Athens. If Zeus really wants to do this, I must report to him. In the battle of the ocean, my goddess of victory is very fond of the god of opportunity, and I think they are very suitable. Quote. Niki's face collapsed. My goddess Athena, you should know that you are the only one in my heart, don't give me away, not even your brother. She was joking with a resentful look when her face suddenly changed. Looking ahead, he said, Father, he sent me a message saying that he is waiting for us there. The faces of the two Phoros froze. Follow the direction to a remote island. I saw Pallas, who was haggard and full of ravines, sitting quietly on a stone, looking at the vast ocean. His Royal Highness Pallas. Phoros and Athena greeted each other. Pallas got up slowly and said to Phoros, Acosta, the new master of the oceanic gods, is my subordinate, and I have taken the oceanic gods as promised. Phoros frowned. His Royal Highness Pallas really lived up to the name of the god of war strategy. Although we have heard the news of changes in the oceanic god system before, we have already guessed. But when I actually heard it, I still felt a little unbelievable. Quote. In recent years, because of Arnold's deeds, the oceanic gods have shown signs of weakening. But anyway, it is also one of the three major gods of the ocean. Who would have imagined that a middle god who was regarded as a useless person would lightly change his master? Phoros and Athena admired this very much. Pallas smiled. Sturdy fortresses often crumble from within. Just like back then, if it weren't for the hedgers like Arnold's and Arnold's, the goddesses of justice would all fall to Zeus. Why did the Titan god court, which ruled the universe, be overthrown by the three Zeus brothers? Quote. With a long sigh, he said again. Ocean Arnold's is already old, although the gods are immortal, but if the heart is old, they lose the courage to forge ahead. That also loses all the greatness that belongs to God. The ninth level of the main god needs to maintain a firm heart and an immortal self. Quote. Young gods, I hope you will always maintain the spirit of determination now. Don't be blurred by achievements to stare at the vision ahead, don't be corrupted by pleasure to fight bravely, don't be worn down by time to dry the sea and move the sky. He gazed deeply at Phoros and at Athena with his dark eyes. Then he took out from his body a stone carving carved with brilliant stars, and handed it to Phoros. This is a token given to me by my elder brother Astraeus, Lord of the Stars. If you need it, you can use this to go to the starry sky to find him, and he will agree to all your requests. Looking at the token, Phoros said, Your Highness Pallas, although you have promised before. But I think we haven't known each other for a long time, and we don't know each other well, so you don't need to do so much for me all at once. Young god, don't you know that I actually have the will to subvert this court? Pallas laughed, said in a low voice. If it wasn't for the preparations we've been making all these years, how could the matter of seizing the oceanic god system have progressed so fast? I'm just doing what I want to do. And I just met you who are on the same road, so you are the person I am waiting for. Quote. Looking at Pallas's ravenous cheeks, Phoros suddenly felt that this face exuded a dazzling brilliance. He said in a low voice, Unfortunately, on Guigant's island, I couldn't find a way to recover for you. But I will find it in the future, this is my promise to you. Quote. Pallas nodded slightly. At this time, a calm voice suddenly came. It doesn't need to be that troublesome. Several people looked in surprise. I saw the vast sea surface suddenly covered by gorgeous stars, and the deep night slowly descended. A girl in a brown skirt with a mysterious temperament walked out of the night with a smile on her lips. Goddess Nyx. Phoros and the others hurried towards her. Although it still looks like Hecate, this is undoubtedly Nyx, the goddess of the night. Slowly falling from the sky. The smiling girl shook her head. It's been a long time since I've been active. This time I've been entangled with Gaia for a long time, but I'm quite tired. Fortunately it's not my divine body. Phoros asked in surprise, Goddess, did you fight Earth Mother? Of course, I ruined Gaia's plan for who knows how many years, and she definitely can't just forget it. It's a pity that neither she nor I have reached the level of the root vortex, the gap between them is not big, and we can't tell the difference, so we can only let it go. Quote. While talking, the starry eyes of the goddess lightly swept towards the haggard palace. When I asked you about the location of the island before, I saw that you were polluted by the filthy light of Guigans. For the sake of you being the first to discover this, I will remove the filthy light from your body. Quote. Saying that she raised her hand. A thick night shrouded Pallas. After a while, the god of war strategy trembled, as if something had been erased. The haggard body gradually became much fuller. The scar-like cuts on the gullied cheeks also slowly disappeared. His stooped back straightened up, and his gray hair was jet black. A heroic and resolute middle-aged male god appeared in front of Phoros and the others. Then only the middle god level reaches the upper god, and then restores to the main god. You've been under the filthy light for too long to finish. It will take some time to fully recover. Quote. The goddess with eyes as bright as the stars lightly told him. Goddess Nyx, thank you for helping me recover. Pallas saluted respectfully, then looked himself up and down. Self-deprecating. After being polluted for so long, it's a bit uncomfortable to recover suddenly. Father, you are so hypocritical. The goddess of victory came up in surprise and rolled her eyes at Pallas. Phoros and Athena came up to congratulate Pallas. Then he looked at the figure next to him. Goddess, if the Earth Mother fights with you, the incident on Gigante's island should be completely over. That's true for me, but you have to be careful, Gaia is a very stingy woman. I can't help it, maybe I want to talk to my young and handsome son about life. She likes a good-looking and strong young male god like you the most. Quote. In the night, the girl with eyes as bright as stars smiled and exhorted. Phoros was speechless. This is indeed something the Earth Mother can do. After all, even Poseidon, she is down to the people. Alas, the good-looking male god these days. If you are out alone, you have to protect yourself. Okay, pay attention to yourself, I'm going to take Hecate back to Hades first. She used her body to fight Gaia, and now she is the most likely to be targeted by Gaia. Quote. Goddess, I have one more thing I want to ask you. Quote. Phoros suddenly stopped her. Facing those deep eyes shining like stars, he solemnly said. You should know what I have to do, subvert Olympus and kill Zeus. The underworld of Hades is also an important part of the Olympus court. I am going to take action against the underworld. I don't know if it will affect you. Originally, Phoros had no intention of directly attacking Hades. At most, after overthrowing Zeus, the underworld will be incorporated. As long as Hades is interested, he will be allowed to be the king of the underworld. But as Hecate said last time, Hades' recent actions in Hades. Phoros knew that he needed to solve the affairs of Hades. And now the battle of the seas is over. It's time to get down to it. Pallas gradually occupied the ocean here, and he then mastered the Hades. 2/3 of the Olympus court is in your hands. In the end, only Zeus was left alone and helpless. If you overturn Olympus' plan, you will succeed. After a moment of silence, the deep girl under the night made a peaceful voice. If you're going to take action, do it. I can't help you personally. But Thanatos and other gods in the realm of the night will be your help. Quote. Thank you, Goddess Nixon. Zeus, you asked Athena to bring that Phoros to Olympus. Are you going to do what I suggested earlier? In the palace of the king of gods in Olympus. The queen Hera looked at her husband Zeus curiously. The king of the gods was a little silent at the moment. He seemed to be still thinking, hesitating. Athena is the daughter who means the most to him. Born from his head, it resembles the face of Métis, powerful, dignified and sacred, full of glory. It is the brightest pearl of his Olympus. Really forcing such a daughter who had sworn to be a virgin to marry. Even if he was as cold as him, he felt that he had gone too far. But this daughter has been very loyal though. But that face that resembled Métis couldn't make people feel at ease. Just like going to the ocean this time. I asked her to monitor Poseidon, Prometheus and the others, but it seemed that there was not much result at all. Is there really no gain, or does she actually have other thoughts? As Hera said, try how much she obeys her will. It is also a good choice. Moreover, if she loses her status as a virgin goddess, her prestige among the gods will undoubtedly decrease a lot. That's more reassuring, too. Hesitating in his heart, Zeus tapped his hand on the throne with a headache. Suddenly, he came to his senses. Didn't I worry about Phoros because of this? Why did you focus on Athena after thinking for a long time? Forget it, Gaia kicked me out, and now I can only go there once. Under Hera's strange eyes, Zeus got up suddenly, gritted his teeth and walked out. Hera wanted to ask him where he was going. But Zeus didn't answer. Leaving the God King Hall, he soon came to the holy torch stand which was still in ruins. Hephaestus is still so slow. Let him rebuild a holy torch, which has not been started for so long. Quote. With an ugly face, he snorted coldly, and then he walked towards the temple of Goddess of Destiny on the other side. Still a depressing and treacherous atmosphere. In the dark palace, the sun row is dim and the candlelight is dim. The three goddesses of destiny are dressed in clean white robes, sitting in front of the spinning wheel. See Zeus walk in, the youngest Croto said lightly. King of the gods, you came later than we expected. With a cold face, Zeus said indifferently. I'm giving you enough time to think about what you did to violate our cooperation. He looked indifferently at the tightly bound Uranus on the portal in the depths. Hyperion and Theia have already been punished by me to show the gate to Olympus. They will not have the opportunity to inform you of any news in the future. Quote. The faces of Uranus on the door and the three fates in front of the spinning wheel all changed. How did Zeus know about the Hyperion couple? See their reactions. Zeus was still skeptical. It was instantly clear that the fire stealer hadn't lied to him. Hyperion, Gaia and his wife have been secretly writing about the Uranus connection here. And the intervention of the three goddesses of fate must be indispensable. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the Hyperion couple to enter the gate of the Temple of Fate. Thinking of this, he sneered at the three goddesses of fate with a gloomy face. I used to think how mysterious, powerful, and omniscient you are. Now it seems that she is just a woman who can only play tricks. Quote. Atropos, the eldest sister of the three goddesses of fate, put down the scissors in her hand. Stand up and look at Zeus. Even if we did something that harmed our cooperation, it was because you thought it was wrong to do so. Otherwise, why did you go to Gaia first, and was finally beaten out by her, and came to us with a big loss of face? The three goddesses of fate also looked at Zeus with sarcasm. Zeus' face was very ugly. At this time, Lachesis, the second sister of the three goddesses of fate, said slowly. King of the gods, both of us are in a mutually beneficial relationship. If we cooperate, we will benefit each other, and if we divide, we will lose each other. In the future, it is better to be more open and honest, so that there will be less dirty, and it will be more beneficial to both parties. Quote. HMPH, that also requires you to show enough sincerity. Zeus snorted coldly, his face softened a bit. At this time Atropos asked, You, the king of the gods, why not tell us the reason for your visit today? We can meet your needs first. I want to know who the fire stealer is and where it is now. Can you find it for me? Zeus said coldly. Fire thief, is that the one who fought against you, the king of the gods, in the Caucasus mountain that day? The eyes of the three goddesses of fate suddenly hesitated. After hesitating, he said, Actually, we have explored him before, but in the endless trajectory of fate. There is no such thing as a fire stealer at all. He seems to be an invisible life hidden behind the fate. Well, is this your sincerity? Zeus roared. Are you guys trying to hide something, or am I thinking too highly of you? The fire thief knows everything about you and Uranus. You don't even know anything about him. The words of Zeus let the three goddesses of fate and Uranus, who had been hanging on the door without making a sound, frowned. What Zeus meant about their letting Hyperion into the Temple of Fate? Was it the fire thief who told him? How can that be? The three goddesses of fate suddenly remembered. The day the flame of Olympus was stolen. It happened that the Hyperion couple came to the Temple of Fate again. Then there was the fire thief who destroyed the torch of Olympus. Since they were not far away, they also heard the movement at that time. But what happened in Olympus had nothing to do with them. Also ignored. Looking at it now, it could be that the fire stealer had already targeted the Hyperion couple before. When they enter here, he also sneaked in, and heard clearly what the three of them and Uranus had said. This is impossible. The faces of the three goddesses of destiny were horrified. They can't imagine that there is a presence in front of them. Sneak into the temple of the goddess of destiny and eavesdrop on things. But apart from this possibility, there is no explanation for all this. And from the moment, they can't see the traces of the fire stealer under the trajectory of fate. The other party may indeed have the ability to hide from their perception. This is a variable that is not shrouded in fate. The three goddesses of fate looked at each other solemnly. At this time Zeus sneered and said, Since the fire thief cannot be found, show me Phoros, the god of opportunity. Is he hiding any secrets? Is there any connection with the fire thief? Quote. After witnessing the performance of Phoros in the ocean, the god king had an idea. Prometheus can't be a fire stealer, he doesn't have that kind of strength. But this is the strength of Phoros. But it is very close to the fire stealer. It is not impossible that it is the fire stealer itself, or has a connection. I don't think you guys will let me down again this time, do you? He looked coldly at Sister Atropos. The three goddesses of fate pursed their lips and said, Except for the accident of fire stealer, there will never be other gods in this world who can escape the eyes of fate. The three of them walked to the spinning wheel as they spoke, and turned the wheel. At first they looked very confident. But as time went by, the faces of these three goddesses suddenly became embarrassing. What's going on? Can't you do it again? Zeus roared, and he suspected that the three women in front of him were playing tricks on him. King of the gods, don't be angry. The Phoros you want us to investigate, his fate is very unusual, and he has the breath of the Evernight goddess. Lachesis, who looked like a middle-aged woman, looked at Zeus with a troubled face. Zeus was very puzzled. Didn't you say that any god can't escape your eyes, so what if there is the breath of the goddess Nyx? The three goddesses of fate looked at each other. Some helpless. Of course they couldn't tell Zeus. The so-called trajectory of fate. In the age of ignorance, it was composed of Moros, the god of destiny, and Moirai, the goddess of destiny. Moros, the god of destiny, is the eldest son of Nyx, the goddess of the night. The gods of the first genius in the age of ignorance. Although seniority is not big. But at the end of the age of ignorance, the root law has been surpassed. The great person who has reached the source vortex. Before the three of them split, Moirai, the goddess of fate, was nothing but the root law. The proportion in the torrent of fate cannot be compared with Moros at all. But now Moros is almost equivalent to fall. But the will remaining in fate, still able to hinder them and explore the gods with his mother's breath. The atmosphere became a little awkward. It took a while. The three fates silently stood up from the spinning wheel. Said to Zeus, King of the gods, please change your request. Chapter 91. Zeus wanted to scold his mother very much. I came to your place before. The three of you have always been mysterious and unpredictable, everything in the world is under your control. Little God King, ignorant ant, looks like nothing worth mentioning. Why do I have something to ask you now? You can't do this, can't you do that? Try to keep your emotions in check. Zeus said with a cold face. Since you can't find fire thief or Phoros, show me Typhon. Hear the name. The three goddesses of fate breathed a sigh of relief. Call. Finally, one of my three sisters knew about it. He regained his former composure. The three goddesses sat down before the spinning wheel with smiles on their faces. King of the gods, we know your worries. But rest assured, in the great plan of fate, Typhon is doomed to die at your hands for reaching here. Quote. Zeus was dissatisfied with the unfathomable words of the three goddesses of destiny. Let's be clear, what does it mean that Typhon is destined to die at my hands because he arrived here? Originally he was very polite to the three goddesses of fate. Now all the respect I had before was gone. Talked loudly. The three sisters of Atropos also know because of what happened just now. The mysterious image that made them know everything and master everything was shattered in Zeus's heart. Don't use vague words to create yourself, and tell him straight away. It's you who want to defeat Typhon. We must lead him to us, and then we can defeat him. Quote. You mean, relying on my own strength alone, I can't defeat Typhon? Zeus' expression changed. The three goddesses of fate nodded. Under the trajectory of fate, you are destined to be defeated by Typhon first, and then you can successfully defeat him under the favor of fate. Fortune of fate, what is this? It doesn't refer to the three of you, does it? Zeus' eyes widened. He now completely lost trust in the three goddesses in front of him, suspecting that they were just tricking him. To beat Typhon is to beat Typhon. There is no reason to lose first and then win. Fate favors, what kind of absurd statement is this? The three goddesses of fate glanced at each other. At the same time, he got up and said, we are only the assistants of fate, not fate itself. The so-called favor of fate refers to it. The three of them pointed to the depths of the dim temple. The pattern with the vast starry sky, the majestic and grand momentum, bound the grand portal of Uranus. We told you before, this door is called, the door of ignorance, also called, the door of destiny. The so-called favor of fate means that you have to make a contract with it. Then it will give you the power to help you defeat Typhon and all powerful enemies. Quote. Zeus stared at the portal, frowning. Although it's not the first time I've seen it. But this is hidden in the deepest part of the dark temple, which binds the magnificent portal of the first generation of god kings. No matter how many times you watch it, seeing it again will still leave a deep imprint in my heart. It is difficult to describe its grandeur, its majesty in words. It seems that even if the fate of everything is controlled in the dark, it is the real body that manifests. It represents the absolute rule and final destination of everything in the world. Contract with it, what kind of contract law? Zeus asked. The three goddesses of fate told him with a smile. as long as you walk in front of it and drop a drop of blood. It's that simple. It's that simple. Zeus didn't respond. Just stood quietly in the temple, and the gods opened the magnificent door with their hands. Uranus, who was bound on the door, looked at him coldly. There is nothing in the eyes, with a hint of interest. It seems to be looking forward to Zeus's next choice. There was a long silence. Zeus suddenly asked, Atropos, how strong is Typhon? I must rely on the favor of fate to defeat him. The elder sister of the three goddesses of destiny. He replied with a low noise. Typhon's personality is roughly equivalent to yours, not the original, but has the power comparable to the original. But what is even more frightening is his ability. He was specially born to fight against the gods, and he is your destined enemy. Only the favor of fate allows you to defeat him. Quote, born for the gods, my old enemy. Isn't Typhon the son of Gaia and Tartarus? Could it be that they are targeting me? Zeus frowned. The voices of the three fate goddesses suddenly became ethereal. Zeus, have you forgotten? Typhon is exactly after you imprisoned Cronus and other titans in Tartarus. Just came out of that dark abyss. If you don't lock your father in there, he won't come out. So he is your old enemy. As for why he was born against the gods, you'll have to ask Gaia. When hearing the name, Cronus, Uranus, who was bound to the door over there, suddenly turned red in his eyes. But the other four people present didn't pay attention to his thoughts. Zeus frowned. Think carefully about what the three goddesses of fate said. Finally, he asked, if I can advance to Yuan, can I rely on my own strength to defeat Typhon? The three goddesses of fate stared at him lightly. Sorry, king of the gods. Under the fate trajectory we have seen, you are still far from being promoted to the original stage. Zeus said with an ugly face. How is it possible? I have already mastered all the authority in the thunder and lightning domain, and my combat power is comparable to that of the original. It is the closest existence in the world to the original. I can't be promoted to Yuan, who can be promoted? Don't wait for the three goddesses of fate to answer. Uranus inside sneered coldly. Son of Cronus, you are wrong. The one who is closest to the original is not you, but me who has all the authority in the sky, then Cronus, and then it's your turn. And even Cronus and I have not been able to advance to the original level during these long years. What are you? Uranus's sarcasm was particularly harsh. But Zeus was silent without rebuttal. Indeed, both Uranus and Cronus are still stronger than him. But these two generations of god kings. In the countless years of ruling the world, I have never been able to comprehend the root and set foot on the original. Because you're going the wrong way. The plain voice of the three fate goddesses sounded. Zeus and Uranus both stared at them. They said slowly. The original is not the world, but the world is the original, and each original is a part of the world, but independent. It is the law that originally created the world and the authority of the gods. This is the greatness of the power of the source. Quote, and by concentrating all the authority in a certain field, you have combined a power comparable to the original. This certainly gives you a mighty power that surpasses the 9th level of the main god and is comparable to the 1st level of the root. But it also imprisons you in the world itself. Quote, original has left the world, it is still original. When you leave the world, you will lose all authority, which is the gap between you and the original. Quote, and the correct way is to understand the root at the 9th level of the main god, sublimate oneself, jump out of the shackles of the world itself, and thus gain independence. You insist on more authority, stronger power, and completely bind yourself with the world, so it will be difficult to escape. So you too, the difficulty of advancing to the original level is at least 10 times that of the ordinary 9th level of the main god. Better not to be delusional. Quote, the words of the three goddesses of fate made the relationship between Zeus and Uranus very ugly. He hesitated for a while. Zeus said in a low voice, so I can only choose to make a contract with this portal, otherwise I will die in the hands of Typhon. He stared intently at the three sisters Atropos, Lachesis, and Croto. The three goddesses of fate. Dressed in a white robe, he said nothing. Sitting quietly in front of the spinning wheel, he pointed at the magnificent portal with his palm. Zeus hesitated for a long time, then slowly walked over. He stood in front of Uranus. The palm of the hand touched the huge portal covering the vast starry sky. A strange feeling came to his heart. Under the expectant eyes of the three goddesses of fate, He stretched out his fingers little by little. It's like trying to squeeze out the blood of the gods to complete the contract. Uranus above has a strange light in his eyes. Like memories, like expectations, like ridicule. But at this moment, Zeus suddenly stopped his palm. Turned around sharply. Atropos, I guess I'm not thinking about it. Looking at the elder sister of the three goddesses of fate, the god king said slowly. The three goddesses of destiny showed no waves on their expressions. Just watch him closely. King of the gods, you will come again, it is destiny. They told him so. Zeus was noncommittal, and looked up at Uranus above him. About to say something, the magnificent portal at the rear suddenly shook. The faces of the 5 people present all changed. His eyes were fixed on the gap in the door. I saw that there seemed to be some surging power attacking inside. The door that uses Uranus as the bolt, imprisoning the seal. The door vibrated violently. It vibrates every time. Zeus' heart beat violently once. It seemed as if something terrifying was approaching. The 3 fates are after the initial surprise. Become quiet, as if you know something. He stared at the door expectantly. Only Uranus chained to the door above. Accompanied by the continuous impact of the portal. Make a low growl of pain. Fortunately, the roar didn't last long. The crack in the door that was forced out of a gap impressively shot a multicolored light. In the dark temple, under the dazzling light, a beautiful figure of Meowman appeared vaguely, holding a box-shaped object in her hand. Make dreamy spiritual sounds. I am coming out. In the dimly lit temple, Zeus, Uranus and the 3 goddesses of fate. Staring closely, the colorful light dissipated, and the Meowman figure appeared in front of their eyes. Reflected by the faint candlelight, their breathing couldn't help but quicken. Beautiful, so beautiful, indescribably beautiful. What was reflected in their eyes was firstly a picture that was extremely delicate. Just like the most shrewd craftsman, the face has been sketched out after exhausting all kinds of efforts. Crystal nose, exquisite ears, thin lips, beautiful eyes, long eyelashes. Under the long black hair like a waterfall, there is a charming smile on her fair cheeks like porcelain. She was wearing a plain black robe. Wrapped in a curvaceous, slender figure with uneven bumps, it is flawless. The simple clothes did not detract from her beauty at all. On the contrary, it adds 3 points of freshness. Most notably, her pair of jade hands, which were exposed outside the robe, were soft and delicate, like crystals. Clear bone, ruddy flesh, without blemish. Holding tightly a short black box with weird patterns. A pair of beautiful black eyes stared at the surroundings with bewilderment and curiosity. Her whole person is a perfect work of art. Anywhere on the body. If you add a penny or minus a penny, there will be flaws, and it will no longer be perfect. But she is this flawless woman who should only exist in imagination and calculation. He looked at her silently for a long time. 5 gods in the temple. They were completely unable to restrain their rapid breathing. Among these 5 people, there are male gods and female gods. There is also a god who is neither male nor female, whose connection with his wife on the earth was cut by his son. But at this moment, he looked at the woman in black robe holding the box in front of him. They were all irresistibly conquered by that charm. Fortunately, they are the most powerful gods in the world. All of them are above the 9th level of the main god. Has the most firm and powerful heart, unshakable will. Possibility of total self-control. Only then did I slowly calm myself down and regain my sanity. The 3 goddesses of fate came to this woman first. The 3 looked at each other and murmured at the same time. It really is her, no different from the savage age, just as perfect. It is the most beautiful blessing in the world, but also the most terrible curse. Then Uranus, who was bound to the door, also spoke. You 3 seem to know her. The 3 goddesses of fate replied. Not only us, Gaia and Nyx also know her. Only you, a god after the middle period of ignorance, don't know her. Then who is she? Such an appearance simply shouldn't exist in this world. Quote. Uranus stared at the woman's face and said with a sigh. At this time, the woman with blank eyes finally spoke again. Who I am. She still has the same question. A pair of beautiful and perfect eyes, full of curiosity about the outside world and confusion about oneself. The 3 goddesses of fate watched her quietly. Said to her, you are the first human being in the world, a life that has received all blessings and all curses. Your existence is destined to bring redemption and destruction to the world. Your name is Pandora. Pandora, hear the name. Holding the black box in her hand, the flawless woman in black robes seemed to feel something. He nodded happily. At this moment, the three goddesses of fate took out a pair of crystal coffins, and said, "You are the first human to be blessed and cursed to reappear. It is necessary to be blessed by the gods again and belong to the human race. Quote, come on, lie down here first, let's go to sleep. When you wake up, you will be able to see the infinite vast world." The voices of the three goddesses of fate possessed a sleep-like magical power at some point. Unconsciously, Pandora slowly poured into the crystal coffin and lay down quietly. Hold the black box tightly in your hand. With a beautiful posture, peacefully enter sleep. You said her name was Pandora. It was Zeus who came back to his senses completely. Looking in surprise at the perfect figure already lying in the crystal coffin, his eyes were reluctant to part. The three goddesses of fate looked at him. You once asked us why we need human life. We answer you, when the number of human beings is sufficient, that is when you know. Quote, although the number of human beings is still a bit short, somehow, she appeared earlier. He glanced at Pandora lying in the crystal coffin. The three goddesses of fate said solemnly, as the first human being in the true sense, the existence of Pandora is extraordinary. She will bring destruction and salvation to the world. And her appearance also marks that it won't be long before this gate of ignorance will be truly opened. Quote, Zeus quickly glanced at the portal behind and Uranus on the portal. That is this first-generation god king about to regain his freedom? Uranus is nothing, other existences in the gate of obscurity. That's what you're truly in awe of. Quote, the words of the three goddesses of fate made Uranus snort coldly. But he didn't refute. Zeus remembered at this moment. He once secretly peeped at the portal behind him, and once vaguely saw Pandora holding a box in front of him. At that time, many terrifying lights and shadows appeared inside. He didn't remember a single one of them afterwards. But obviously, like Pandora, those also exist behind the gate of ignorance. Uranus was no more than a janitor. The door of ignorance, the door of ignorance, does this door have anything to do with the age of ignorance? Zeus asked with a stiff face. He just wanted to ask about Phoros and the fire thief today. I didn't expect to give him a scene of shock. The fates did not answer his question. He just said, all of this will be accompanied by Pandora's coming out, as she opens the box in her hand, and turns the gear of fate. You need to choose a partner for her, a partner who has a considerable connection with the current creator of human beings and has a relationship with human beings themselves. Let the gods bless her first, and then let her follow her husband to the minister of mankind. Then she will slowly wake up and open the box in her hand. Quote, transfer the disaster that should have destroyed the entire world onto human beings, and let them suffer all the suffering in the world. Speaking of this, the three of them were solemn. Quote, the disaster of mankind is the salvation of the world. There is only hope, which lasts forever. The information revealed by the three goddesses of fate. It made Zeus' face change wildly. Then I looked at the beautiful and sleeping perfect person lying quietly in the crystal coffin. He couldn't help asking, choose a partner for her, do you think I'm suitable? The fates glanced at him. He said indifferently, if you are not afraid of terrible disasters and misfortunes befalling you, you can try. Zeus shuddered. Although he is lustful, he loves himself more. To have a close relationship with the creator of the present human beings, we must also have a relationship with the human beings themselves. Hey, what do you guys think of the Phoros I asked you to scout earlier? Zeus asked suddenly. He was hesitant to marry Athena as Hera said. But now he found out. I have a new and better candidate. The three goddesses of fate thought about it. He replied. He was a student of Prometheus, and one of the two gods who led mankind when they were born. In the current belief of mankind, it is second only to Prometheus and Athena. Barely qualify. But after all, there is no direct blood relationship with Prometheus, nor has it ever been combined with humans, Nuo leaving offspring among them. If he became Pandora's partner, he might die after the box was opened because he couldn't bear the disaster and the unknown. Quote, it's better to die suddenly. Zeus was gearing up, with a chill in his eyes. For a powerful god like Phoros, he can't figure out the details. If it weren't for the fact that the other party was the son of Nyx, the goddess of the night. He had already figured out a way to get rid of it and then quickly. But now here was a new way for him. Such a beautiful woman, if you don't believe me, you won't be tempted. When the time comes, you will be blessed and killed, but you can't blame me on the head of the God King. Think so. Zeus looked at the perfect figure in the crystal coffin, and the desire in his eyes was much less. Beauty is a good thing. But power is more important. And this man is dying. It's too much for the gain. Gritting his teeth, Zeus took out a black cloth to cover the crystal coffin. No longer look at the beautiful figure inside. He bid farewell to the three goddesses of fate, carried the crystal coffin and left. Watching his leaving back, there was an inexplicable smile on the corner of the mouth of the three goddesses of fate. It's coming soon, everything is coming soon. Although not the first time to Olympus. But compared to sneaking in last time, this time he came in openly. The look and feel of Phoros is somewhat different. Mount Olympus is the highest mountain in the world. The center of the universe, the home of the gods. The God King Hall at the highest point is close to the starry sky, overlooking the whole world. Around the foot of the mountain are the residences of many god servants and nymphs. The mountainside is the gathering place of ordinary gods. And the area near the top of the mountain. It is the shrine of many main gods and great goddesses such as Themis, the goddess of justice. Of the 12 main gods of Olympus, there are currently 11 in total. Namely Zeus, Hera, Hestia, Demeter, Apollo, Artemis, Athena, Hephaestus, Hermes, Aphrodite, Ares. The reason why there is one vacancy. It turns out that Poseidon also belonged to the 12 main gods. Then he quit, so there was a vacancy. This is why Poseidon said that he would come to Olympus to ask Phoros for the position of the main god. The position of the main god is his. Go in. Looking at the foot of the mountain ahead, Athena said. Phoros nodded and followed Athena and Nike into the gate of Olympus. Unexpectedly, I just arrived at the entrance. Just saw 2 acquaintances. Hyperion, the god of the sky, and Theia, the goddess of light. These 2 noble Titan gods. At this moment, he was standing at the gate of Olympus with a full face, watching the gods coming and going. Athena said, since the last time the holy torch was destroyed, Hyperion and Theia have been fined to guard the gate of Olympus for dereliction of duty. Heard the news. Phoros blinked. It turned out to be a victim of what he had done. However, these 2 were probably not punished for dereliction of duty. Instead, Zeus believed what he told him last time, and the 2 wrote about Uranus. I don't know if this has successfully provoked the relationship between Zeus and the 3 goddesses of fate. To the mysterious temple of fate. Phoros is still very afraid. That's why he told Zeus about the Hyperion couple and Uranus. Plant a thorn in Zeus's heart. In this way, cracks will inevitably appear in the relationship between him and the 3 goddesses of fate. There is no room for flaws in trusting this kind of thing. Not to mention a ruthless character like Zeus. Thinking like this, he and Athena passed the gate of Olympus. Many servants and nymphs walked inside. Seeing Athena from a distance, they bowed their heads and saluted. Athena smiled at them, beckoning. It also took a lot of time. The 3 of them came to the mountainside where ordinary gods gathered. At this time, there are many gods. The mouths cheered and gathered together. Goddess Athena, what a hero you did in the ocean. You are the pride of Olympus. Goddess Nike, great victory. With you, there will always be the light of victory. My fellow, these gods are here to see Athena and Nike. Phoros also knew how popular his sister was among the gods of Olympus. There are hundreds or even thousands of gods who came to this mountainside to welcome them. There are men and women, and they all look like avid fans. BHDI. There is no way, Athena is the type who kills both men and women. God loves her for her strength, beauty, holiness and kindness. The goddess yearns for her wisdom, independence, self-confidence and pride. And Nike, the goddess of victory, as a slave god, added points. It is not only beautiful and bright, but also has such a wonderful symbolic meaning as victory. No wonder Ares, the god of war, was squeezed so that he had no living space. The opponent is really too strong. Dimensionality reduction hit him, who is also the god of war. For Ares, who was so angry because of Athena's performance in the ocean, he mourned a few times in silence. Phoros said slowly, Olympus gods, goddess Athena is going to command the god king this time. Let's make room first, and talk about things later. Quote, "Hey, you are the god of opportunity." A god in the crowd called out Poros' name. At this time, many gods and goddesses ran to Poros. He said to him with a face full of admiration, "Your Highness Poros, your heroic figure in defeating Pontos is really a model for our young gods. Without you, there would be no victory for His Majesty Poseidon in the ocean. You are really the brightest star of the younger generation of Shenting." A group of male gods first expressed their worship. They just finished talking. There was a bunch of goddesses shouting and pushing them away. Chattering around Poros, asking if he wants to find a wife, a lover is also fine. The goddess of Olympus is still so bold and open. Poros sighed in his heart. I can't help but think of when I became a fire stealer before. Those goddesses who confessed to him in public, Zeus was so angry that he vomited blood. At this time, he suddenly noticed, surrounding him in front of him, among the many goddesses whose eyes are like small stars. Surprisingly, there is one who boldly courted him as the fire stealer back then. Depend on. It's so fast with you guys empathizing with each other. Poros rolled his eyes, quickly slipped out of the surroundings. Greeting the two Athenas, they quickly headed towards the top of Mount Olympus. These passionate gods still want to chase after them. But it's a pity that they can't keep up with the speed of the three main gods. Arrived at the main god's living area near the top of the mountain. The surroundings finally calmed down. At this time, a familiar tall and thin figure appeared in front of them. "Athena, Nikki, I have been waiting for you here for a long time by the order of God the Father." This man was Hermes, an old acquaintance of Poros. At this moment, the messenger of the gods was still wearing a bandage, and his face was pale. A look of unhealed injuries. Poros had heard Nikki mention it. Zeus was unwilling to let Apollo, who had the power of medicine, check the wound. So in order to express his loyalty to Zeus, Hermes also resolutely refused to accept treatment. But there seems to be another gossip. Pan, the son of Hermes, the god of shepherd, once sneaked into the Temple of Light. Asked for a large pack of medicine to come out. I don't know if it's true, or someone is discrediting the loyal messenger of the gods. Poros looked at Hermes' injuries with interest. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Your Highness Poros, long time no see. You are now a mighty deity known throughout the courts, and the gods speak of your valor on the seas." Hermes moved closer to Poros's side, rolled his eyes with a pale face, and sighed with guilt. Recalling the little conflict in Hades, I am really ashamed of myself who was ignorant in the past. Poros knew this guy was always cunning. Now I want to ease the relationship with myself, so that we can meet again later. He also said lightly, "Those are just past events, His Highness Hermes, don't worry about them." Well, today is a big day for Father God to meet you, and all the important gods of Olympus are here. I don't think it will be long, Your Highness Poros, you will be the new main god of Olympus. Hermes said with a smile all over his face. When they speak, has already passed through the temples of many main gods. Arrive at the majestic temple of the King of God, located at the highest point of Olympus. The space of the God King Hall is very large. A symmetrical arched building with the uppermost throne as the axis. One side is a male god, and the other side is a goddess. The golden throne at the top is empty, and Zeus has not yet arrived. The two sides below are already full of gods. Poros looked at the male god first. Apollo, the god of light with brilliant blonde hair, stands at the forefront with his golden bow and arrows on his back. After that was a rough-looking, bearded and burly man with a lame leg. It is the most outstanding craftsman of the gods, Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsman. Then there's the familiar Ares. Today, the god of war went to the temple with wounds. With white bandages all over his body and a crutch hanging, he looked extremely funny. As soon as he saw Poros and Athena coming in, he widened his eyes. Then there's the goddess, headed by Themis, the goddess of justice, who blindfolded her eyes with a cloth strip. After that is Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, smiling at Poros in a red dress. Then there is Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and a goddess of great beauty, Neaumon. Poros is probably Aphrodite, the god of love and beauty. After Athena walked in, she took Nikki to stand between Hestia and Artemis. 3 dignified virgin goddesses stand together in turn, plus the most feminine goddess of love and beauty. Very eye-catching. Hermes pointed to the male god and said to Phoros, "Today God the Father is going to interview you, so you should stand in front of Apollo first." As he said that, he also got into the queue of male gods. Stand between Hephaestus and Ares. According to what he said, Phoros walked up to Apollo and stood at the head of the line of male gods. This made the golden-haired Apollo snort, express dissatisfaction with this act of snatching his position as the head of the male god. But he didn't say anything. He also knew that Phoros, the 9th-level personality of the main god, should stand in front of him. It has to be said that Olympus yin flourishes and yang declines badly. Apart from Zeus, the only high-level male god of the main god is Apollo. And in the goddess team on the opposite side, the goddess of justice, the goddess of the hearth, Athena, and Artemis are all high-level main gods. This is still not complete. For example, the goddess of agriculture, Dritter, has not seen her today. Among the 7 wives of Zeus, the others also did not appear. See Phoros standing in front of Apollo. Hestia in the goddess smiled and said, "Phoros, the last time I met you, I said that there are not many young gods in Olympus who can match you. You still listed Apollo and others, and now you are standing in front of them. Do you know that my vision is accurate? Goddess Hestia, you say so. I feel that His Majesty Apollo is going to shoot me with his golden arrow." Quote. Phoros blinked. "What are you afraid of? His golden arrows are not Eros' golden arrows." Hestia smiled. He glanced at Apollo with a playful look. The god of light spoke proudly. "Goddess Hestia, please stop talking about arrows. As for Phoros, he certainly deserves to be in front of me. But one day, I will regain this position. In the goddess queue, stand behind Apollo's sister, the goddess of hunting, Artemis." The most feminine and charming god of love and beauty, Aphrodite, hurriedly said, "Your Highness Apollo, allow me to apologize again for what happened to Eros." Now he absolutely did not dare to use the golden arrow of love indiscriminately anymore. "Please try not to mention this matter again, he is just a child who can't grow up." Quote. With eyes full of pity, she looked around the gods and expressed her plea. I heard Hestia mention the matter of Eros and Apollo. The gods who were about to laugh a few words. Bewitched by this beautiful poor god of love and beauty, Gu glanced a few times. None of them could bear to make her sad again. At this time, a figure stepped out from the throne above. But it was not Zeus, but a graceful and dignified glamorous woman. His Royal Highness. The gods greeted her. Phoros knew that this was the Queen Hera, who was famous for catching mistresses. Immediately met a gift. Standing beside the golden throne, the beautiful and graceful Hera looked at him with a smile. Child of the goddess Nyx, fair-haired and silver-eyed Phoros, I have heard your name for a long time. Nice to meet you today. Quote, after the noble gods, I am also very happy to meet you. Phoros returned the salute with a faint smile. Hera smiled and said, last time, my husband had a misunderstanding with your teacher, your Highness Prometheus. But fortunately it was clarified at the end. You, like your teacher, are the most outstanding and outstanding gods in the court. Quote, the Queen of God is overrated. As the gods stared, Phoros said humbly. Hera nodded. Don't be humble, if it wasn't for your help this time. My elder brother, Poseidon, will definitely not be able to win the ocean battle. The gods will also lose their dominion over the ocean. It was you who valiantly defeated Pontos and obtained the entire ocean for the court of God. This time my husband, the great king of the gods, is going to reward you. Hera's voice fell. All the gods in the hall immediately agreed. Even Ares, the god of war, is very distasteful to Phoros. Although the court of Olympus is independent of the 3 kings. But the ocean and the underworld are also part of this 3rd generation of gods. Phoros helped Poseidon unify the oceans. It is equivalent to drawing the complete ocean into the territory for the entire Olympus god court. It's like Jin and other vassal states, defeated the Zongnu and other frontier invaders, and expanded their territories. Although that essence does not belong to Zhou Tianzi. But in name, the territory of the Zhou dynasty was expanded. Zhou Tianzi needs to express his praise. Zeus is the emperor of the gods, Poseidon and Hades are the princes and kings. Phoros made a contribution to Poseidon. That is to make military exploits for the entire court of God. This is what the gods of Olympus must admit. Phoros accepted the praises of the gods frankly. His eyes fell on the bright throne beside Hera. That was the throne that belonged to Zeus. It symbolizes the supreme position of the god-king in the entire court. It is also the target of his overthrow. Suddenly, a brilliant arc flickered. The royal robe is majestic, the demeanor is correct, and Zeus has a majestic face. A tall figure appeared on the throne. King of the gods. All the gods below immediately bowed to salute. Zeus looked down at the gods in the hall with a smile on his face. Eyes fell on Phoros. With inexplicable depth in his eyes, he said slowly, "Phoros, you have finally come to me. Your Majesty the God King, I have been invited by you since Mr. Prometheus created human beings. How long it took me to get to Olympus was indeed my rudeness." Quote. Phoros apologized. Zeus smiled. "It doesn't matter, you have been doing meritorious deeds for the court all this time. First, he taught the newborn humans together with Athena, and later helped Poseidon unify the ocean. You are the hero of the court, my hero. Thank you for your compliment." At this time, the Queen Hera, after saluting Zeus, came to the side of his throne. He said to Zeus, "God King, if you don't mention it, I haven't thought that Phoros seems to spend the longest time with Athena during this period. No wonder I see them standing together, very pleasing to the eye." Quote. God King, how did you think about my proposal last time? Hera's words made the gods stare at Phoros and Athena. Some kind of conjecture suddenly appeared in my heart. The faces of the gods and goddesses couldn't help but change. But then Zeus laughed out loud. "Hera, are you talking about making Phoros the Lord God of Olympus? With his personality and achievements, he should indeed be granted the title." Quote. These words made Hera frown. The gods below all breathed a sigh of relief. Just to put it bluntly, the goddess Athena is a virgin goddess who vowed not to marry for life. How could the king of God go against the wishes of his most beloved daughter? It turned out to be just a god. Only Hera's eyes were a little ugly. She thought that Zeus was ready to marry her according to her ideas. But why did you suddenly change your mind now? Zeus ignored her puzzled look. Eyes full of majesty, staring at Phoros below, solemnly said, "The position of the 12 Lord gods of Olympus continues the system of the 10 titans of the Titan court. It is the highest rank of gods in Shenting, and even I am one of the 12 main gods." Quote. Since Poseidon retired from the position of the main god, the 12 main gods have been vacant for quite some time. Phoros, although you already have priesthood in Hades and the sea. But with your 9th level personality of the main god and the achievements you have made for the gods, you are indeed qualified to be one of the 12 main gods. Quote. Now I canonize you as the new main god of Olympus, do you accept it? Phoros stepped out of the male god's queue seriously. Standing in the middle of the temple, he calmly replied, "King of the gods, thank you for your canonization, I am willing to be one of the 12 main gods." In fact, the position of the 12 main gods is more like an honorary title. Represents the most representative deity in the current era of Shenting. It is often preached by the gods in all things. This is of great benefit to him who needs fame points, and it will allow more gods to know him and talk about him. It's like Battle of the Oceans. The name of Phoros was well known by the gods, and his reputation value increased by more than 1 million in one fell swoop. This figure is still rising. Compared with mortals, the reputation points that powerful gods can provide are many times higher. The number of gods is still too rare. Even if they are as fertile as the Arnold's couple, the gods of the whole world add up. That's around 20,000, and just give it a certain amount of time. It is not a problem for human beings on the earth to break through hundreds of millions or billions. Sufficient quantities can make up for the quality gap. The ceremony of canonizing the main god is actually very complicated. But today Zeus only issued the decree first, and the specific ceremony was carried out separately. Phoros received canonization. The gods and goddesses on both sides began to congratulate him. But at this moment, Zeus above suddenly smiled and said, "In addition to the position of the main god, I have also prepared a gift to reward you, Phoros. You are not allowed to refuse." Phoros' face froze. He faintly felt that Zeus's smile was not kind. But before he could speak, Zeus said first, "The gift I want to give you is..." Zeus, our Persephone has been taken by Hades. Suddenly there was a sharp sound. Zeus's voice was interrupted from the outside. The gods stared past. I saw the gentle and dignified second sister of the god king, Dever, the goddess of agriculture. With a face full of anxiety, he ran into the palace of the god king. Behind him was Helios, the sun god, who looked a little nervous. Looking at her, Zeus frowned and said, "What happened?" The goddess of agriculture said eagerly, "Not long ago, Persephone suddenly disappeared. At first I thought she was sneaking out to play. But I searched all over the land, but I couldn't find any trace of her. Then I found Helios." Demeter, who was full of anxiety, secretly looked at the sun god, who was pulled over. While he was sailing the sky in the chariot of the sun, he saw Hades' chariot sneak into Olympus. "I kidnapped Persephone, who was playing alone. Wait for her to finish." Helios nodded quickly. All the gods in the hall were surprised. Pluto, Hades, this elder brother of the god king who has lived in the underworld for a long time and hardly ever shows up. The impression given to the gods is that they are taciturn and serious. How could he suddenly come to Olympus and take away the daughter of the goddess of agriculture and the king of gods? The gods felt incredible. Zeus on the throne also grimaced. He asked the sun god, "Helios, are you sure you read it right?" Helios hurriedly said, "Absolutely not. The sun chariot has given me the ability to see every piece of land illuminated by the sun, and it is impossible for me to see it wrong." Only then did Zeus sink his face. Glanced at the queen Hera next to her. The two were silent. "I don't quite understand what Hades, the brother, is going to do." "Your Majesty the God King, since this matter is related to Pluto. As the god of the underworld, why not let me go to the underworld to see the situation?" Quote. Phoros, standing in the center of the hall, suddenly spoke. Zeus' eyes flashed. He pondered and said, "It is naturally best for you to come forward, Phoros, but the reward I want to give you has not been given yet. The king of gods may wish to send the reward first, and then reward me when I return from the underworld." Phoros felt that the reward from Zeus must not be a good thing. Follow the excuses to procrastinate. Zeus thought about it. No matter what Hades wants to do when he kidnaps Persephone, Phoros went to negotiate the matter. There will definitely be a crack in the relationship between the two. This is also a good thing. As for Pandora, later rewards are not a problem. So he nodded and said, "Okay, I and the gods are waiting for your return." Phoros, "I'm so sorry. You have just been canonized as the main god, so you will come out with me." Quote. Coming out of Olympus, on the way to Hades. Finally regaining her composure, the goddess of agriculture said to Phoros beside her with an apologetic face, "Goddess Demeter, I want to thank you. You came just in time." Phoros said silently in his heart. In the God King palace just now, Zeus's eyes were obviously not quite right. There must be something wrong with the so-called reward. But it came so suddenly that he couldn't get away with it. Fortunately, the goddess of agriculture broke in and gave him room to turn round. "Zeus will definitely not have any good intentions. When I come back from Hades, I figured out a way." Phoros was calm and looked at Demeter beside him with a smile. "Goddess, I am the god of the underworld. After Olympus was sealed, I just went back to have a look." Quote. Demeter knew he was comforting herself. Squeezing out a smile, he said, "Thank you, Phoros. Both are gods." At this moment, he was on the road at a high speed. It didn't take long to come to the entrance of Hades. Just entered the dark underworld. At this time, the figures of Thanatos and Hypnos walked towards them. Seeing Poirot, 977, from a distance, the two of them cried out, "Phoros, why are you back? I heard that you are being honored in Olympus for your service in the sea." Quote. If he does not stutter, he is naturally Hypnos, the god of sleep. He and Thanatos, the god of death, came to Phoros curiously. Phoros greeted them. Then he asked, "Do you know if Pluto went out recently and brought back a little girl?" Pluto, little girl. Hypnos scratched his head suspiciously. Thanatos on the side said, "Today, have a business trip in the Hades palace, heard the back. The temple, there are, girls, crying, sound." It was tiring to listen to this god of death. But both Phoros and Demeter heard him clearly. "It seems that there is nothing wrong. My Persephone was taken captive by Hades to Hades. Brother, why are you doing this? The glamorous face of the goddess of agriculture is full of sorrow and joy, as well as doubts. Phoros knew exactly what Hades wanted. But it's hard to say clearly, and he said in a deep voice, "You will know when you get to the Hades palace." Then Hypnos whispered to Phoros, "Did Hecate tell you what Pluto did during your absence?" Phoros nodded, also said in a soft voice, "This time it just happens to solve this matter." Hypnos said, Mother said, "We, as well as other brothers and sisters in the night realm, listen to you." "Thank you all." Phoros patted him and Thanatos on the shoulder. Seeing Demeter's anxious expression, he immediately bid farewell to the two of them and flew to the Hades Hall. And at this time in the apse of Hades Hall, Hades, iron-like complexion was rare and full of complexity. I saw him standing at the door of a dark room, not under the bright lights inside. There was a girl who looked about 13 or 14 years old, with a lively face. He was crouching timidly in a corner. A pretty face with emerald green eyes buried deep between her knees, her olive hair disheveled. Like very scared, but every time Hades stepped through the door, she jumped up and cried and screamed. And when Hades withdrew, she became weak and timid again, curled up in a corner. Hades was helpless. As I said, you came to me. Apart from becoming my queen, there is absolutely no second possibility to leave. Quote, he said indifferently with a cold voice. The olive-haired girl raised her delicate face angrily. Staring at the dimly lit room around him, he said, "Pluto, how can you court like a girl like you? Look here, it's dark and cold, and there's not even a decent soft bed. Is this the abode you are going to give your queen?" Speaking of which, the little girl, emotions suddenly aroused. Breaking her slender fingers, she said, "When I was in Olympus, I slept in a big soft bed covered with flowers every day. Covered with silk satin, quilt filled with swan feathers. Fall asleep to the singing of Muse sisters every day." Quote, "My closet is full of the most beautiful and innovative dresses designed by the goddess Aphrodite. My shoes and jewelry are all made by Hephaestus' big brother, using special and precious materials. The water I use for bathing is the dew from the first ray of sunlight that my mother asked the nymphs to collect in order to maintain my delicate skin. Look at your place again, there is nothing. Dirty, smelly, and cold. It was black, with no light at all. My skin will lose its radiance without sunbathing every day. Girls are like exploding balloons, constantly pointing and pointing." Hades' face became more and more ugly. He just wanted to find a queen of the underworld to give birth to some gods in his underworld. "Why are you so troublesome, little girl?" said a lot. The girl finally stopped. Pouting his mouth, he said to Pluto, "You want me to be your queen of the underworld, at least prepare the ones I have in Olympus in Hades. Then send hundreds of gods to Olympus in style, and take me next." Quote, Hades took a deep breath. He lowered his voice and said, "As long as you do these, will you marry me?" "Of course not. Doing these is just the most basic, to prove that you have the qualifications to be considered by me. Whether I will be your queen in the future or not, I have to study it for thousands of years." The girl put her waist on her waist and said confidently. Click. Hades held the hand on the edge of the door, and suddenly lost control of his strength, crushing a large piece of the door. The Pluto entered the room with an exasperated face. He said hoarsely, "I don't want to do such a troublesome thing. Whether you agree or not today, I want you to be my queen." "Woo, where are you, mother? Great Father God, you must hear your poor daughter's cry for help in Olympus. Your brother is rougher than a beast, and he wants to force me. God Chaos, Mother Earth, Goddess Nyx, the greatest primordial, you save me." Watching Hades approaching step by step, the girl cried for a moment and curled up in the corner of the room. "Look at her like this." Hades' face froze. He is the king of Pluto, and he has gone through many storms and waves in his life. But I really don't have the experience of forcing the goddess to give birth to myself. See the girl's tears. Totally don't know what to do. While he was hesitating, a report came from outside. "Your Majesty Pluto, your Highness Phoros has returned. And your sister, the goddess Demeter, also came from Olympus." Quote, Phoros, Demeter, Hades' expression changed. His pupils locked tightly and looked at the girl who was curled up on the ground. He yelled, Show her to me, and we'll talk about it when I come back. Then turned and walked out the door. After he leaves, the girl on the ground, who was crying profusely, suddenly stopped crying. The big emerald green eyes blinked and scanned the surroundings. Murmured, rough, cold, and emotionless, the place is still so barren, and the key looks average, and you still want me to marry you. HMPH, what you should do is find your brother, my godfather, and learn how to please girls. No, you should look in the mirror. He stared contemptuously at the direction Hades left. The girl pursed her lips and said, Mother finally came to Hades to save me, but why is that Phoros coming with her? I saw him last time in Athens, he looks pretty good. In the dark and gloomy Hades' palace, Phoros accompanied the anxious goddess of agriculture and waited quietly for a while. Finally, above the black iron cast, on the cold and dark throne. Suddenly, Hades, the king of the underworld, appeared in a black robe with a cold face. Phoros, say you became Powinter's lieutenant in the ocean. As soon as he came out, Hades looked at Phoros coldly. Phoros said with a smile on the corner of his mouth, Your Majesty Pluto, you are a bit behind on this news. Not long ago, I was canonized as one of the 12 main gods of Olympus by His Majesty the God King. Hades, face turned even uglier, stiffly said, At the beginning I asked you to be my deputy, but you shirked it to Hecate. Now that Poseidon and Zeus are looking for you, you are very happy. Quote, Isn't that different? We always have to make changes according to the changes of things, His Majesty Hades. Phoros smiled lightly and faced the Lord of Hades. At this time, Demeter, who couldn't bear it for a long time, shouted loudly. Hades, give me back my Persephone. Hades frowned, sat on it and said coldly. Demeter, I don't know what you're talking about. Hades, stop pretending. I already know that you sent Persephone into Hades. She's just an underage child, why did you take her away from me? Farming is like crazy. Dash straight up and grab Hades by the collar. Pluto said coldly. You are too presumptuous, Demeter. Goddess Demeter, calm down. Phoros also pulls her from behind. But Demeter just clung to Hades firmly. A pair of beautiful eyes, with a bloodshot redness, stare at Hades' dark pupils. Hades, my brother. My elder brother who is completely different from Poseidon and Zeus in my heart. Tell me, what are you going to do to my daughter? Looking at the red eyes in front of him, Hades was silent. He tugged at the collar that was grabbed by his sister. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath on the cold throne. After a while, I opened my eyes coldly. I want her to be my queen. Become your queen of the underworld. Demeter was a little dumbfounded. She didn't expect her elder brother to give her such an answer. Ha, Hades, if you want to find the empress of the underworld, there are so many goddesses of Olympus. Which one do you like? I can introduce you, Persephone is just a child. Quote. Demeter let go of Hades' collar and stammered slightly. Hades was silent. Demeter went on to say, I know Persephone too well, she has been spoiled by me since she was a child, and she can't bear the slightest pain. If you really marry her, brother, she will cry and make noise all the time in this underworld, making it difficult for you to live in peace. Quote. Hades raised his eyes. As expected of a mother, she knows her daughter very well. But is it so simple? Hades couldn't help but think of what happened to him in Olympus. At that time, he took advantage of Zeus's absence. Sneak into Olympus. I want to find a beautiful, powerful and fertile goddess, and bring her back to be the queen of the underworld. Unexpectedly, I walked around Olympus. It is found that those who meet this condition are basically Zeus's people. A few of them, such as Athena and Artemis, are not easily taken away. None of the other gods met his requirements. Being ugly is nothing. Endurance passed. But how strong can a group of 17 goddesses who are not even the main gods breed for themselves? Although it is not the more powerful the combination of gods and spirits, the children born must be stronger. But the strength of the parents can often guarantee the quality of the children born. Therefore, goddesses who are not strong are excluded. This excludes. He found that unless he really picked up the broken shoes that Zeus had used, or risk a complete break with Zeus and grab Athena and Artemis, there is really no other choice. Pluto was very depressed. At this time, he finally found his sister's daughter Persephone. Although this little girl is still some distance from adulthood. But it is already the peak of the upper god. When he reaches full adulthood, he will definitely become the main god. A strong principle that fits his requirements. And she is the goddess of spring, seeds, and fertility. It sounds very productive. It fit his needs perfectly. So he immediately took her back to Hades. Sister, it's not that I'm targeting your daughter too much. Except for her, I have no other good choice. Hades thought so in his heart. There was an expression of fascination on his face. Demeter, my sister, you can't imagine, when I saw the face of your innocent daughter for the first time. The throbbing from the depths of my soul. Quote, that's when I knew it. She is the other half of my life destined to meet me. I can't hold myself back for even a blink of an eye. I want her to become the mistress of my underworld immediately, and be closely integrated with my life. No reason or force can stop my irresistible impulse. Because that is the calling of my soul and divinity. Hades chanted lame confessional lines while dancing on the throne. Express his inner love with actions. Both Phoros and Demeter had strange expressions. They are unimaginable. Hades, who usually has a face like black iron, is serious and serious. To be able to show such expressions and movements, and to say such love words that make people's skin crawl. If you don't think you know something about this Pluto. Phoros almost believed the nonsense. As for Demeter, she was half believing at the moment, and lowered her voice with embarrassment. Brother Hades, this is just a momentary illusion. Besides, Persephone is still very young, maybe when she grows up, you won't like her. Before she finished speaking, Hades interrupted. Demeter, you don't need to say any more. I was able to see my heart correctly, and I know it clearly now. I just want to make Persephone my queen and give her my deepest love. Let her give me countless gods and goddesses to fill the entire underworld. Phoros clicked his tongue secretly. He felt that only the last sentence of Hades' words was sincere. The underworld lacks gods. It is indeed a good way to find a good queen and raise more. But according to his impression, many versions of Greek mythology, there is basically no such thing as Persephone giving birth to Hades in that version. On the contrary, after becoming the queen of Hades, Persephone's temperament changed drastically. He has been related to a lot of male gods in Olympus, such as Ares and Hermes. Especially with Zeus, many children were born. They also serve in Hades. I don't know how Hades would feel at that time. With a dry cough, he said, Pluto, even if you insist on having the goddess Persephone as a banquet, that should also let her go back to Olympus first. Then go to discuss with His Majesty the God King and Goddess Demeter. Finally, a grand wedding ceremony is held to welcome the goddess Persephone into the Hades. Quote, Demeter nodded repeatedly. Phoros is right. Marriage is not a trivial matter. Brother, you are the majestic Pluto, let alone be casual. Let me take Persephone back first. It is prudent for you to discuss this matter with Zeus before making a decision. Quote, HMPH, I already said that. I can't do without Persephone, not even a moment. Pluto stared at the two with a stern expression, looking like he would never let go. He didn't believe in putting people back. Zeus could easily give it to him. Seeing Hades' attitude, Demeter was anxious and angry, unable to speak. At this moment Phoros came forward slowly. Staring at Hades said, Pluto, Goddess Persephone is the daughter of His Majesty the God King and also your niece. Is it too much for you to marry and occupy like this? Too much. Hades looked stern, standing up abruptly from the throne. A pair of pitch-black pupils stared angrily at the young blonde deity below. Phoros, you were originally the god of my underworld. Now one mouthful of a god king, are you going too far? Pluto, you are wrong, the realm of the night is independent of the mainstream of the gods of the Earth Mother. I have never belonged to any line of sky, earth, sea, or Hades. Quote. Phoros responded lightly. A stern look suddenly appeared on his face. And it doesn't matter who I am or what my position is. Your behavior of kidnapping the goddess and forcing you to marry your niece is definitely not correct. If the sword of justice of the goddess Themis is here, you will surely be stained with blood. Quote. Good, very good. I misunderstood you. I shouldn't have been from Goddess Nyx in the first place. Come on, you traitor. Hades was full of anger, and suddenly laughed wildly. The dark eyes seemed to be burning with fiery flames. Burning panic. Demeter, who was worried about her daughter, couldn't help being taken aback. He took 2 steps back timidly. Weakly said, Phoros, let's go back to Olympus first, and ask the god king and goddess Themis to decide this matter. She had never met Hades, this brother. There was such a fierce light in the eyes. Hear her voice. The corners of Phoros' mouth curled up slowly. Goddess Demeter, since I have volunteered to come to Hades to mediate this matter for you. Whether Pluto accepts the attunement or not, releases Persephone. Still making trouble like this now. Quote, I will let you and your daughter walk out of Hades safely. Phoros, you have a big tone. In front of the throne made of black iron. Hades sneered, glanced indifferently below. Don't think that just because you have a record in the ocean, you are really good. In front of me, it's not your turn to be presumptuous. Suddenly, the Lord of Hades. A black and sharp double-pronged fork appeared in his hand. This is the supreme artifact of Hades, which symbolizes birth and death. But when Hades took it out, endless death and terror instantly enveloped the entire underworld like a shadow. Demeter, the main god, was so overwhelmed that he couldn't breathe. It was opposite him at this time. In the hands of Phoros, the staff of spirit also emerged brightly. A majestic and sacred atmosphere. The turbulent impact rushed towards the death force that shrouded it. Boom! A huge muffled sound beamed into the dark hall of Hades. P.S. At 10 o'clock last night, the timer was originally set at 6 o'clock this morning, but the hands slipped at that time. So there were only 3 updates today, but after thinking about it, I decided to do another update. Please give me some flowers and tickets, good night. Buzz. The muffled sound was low and piercing. In the dark and tall Hades palace. The thick mighty power of death is intertwined into an invisible net, covering the sky from above. The gloomy and terrifying breath, like the sad song of the dead, reverberated endlessly. Brush. Amazing divine beams. Like a burning flame, it soared into the sky. Under the thick and dark net of death, holes were torn open. The turbulent power is like an indestructible mountain. In the tide of death to open up the frontier, stand firm. When the dark eyes of the Lord of Hades looked at Phoros' silver eyes as bright as stars. The majestic divine power of the 2. The Hades Hall, which had been made of special building materials and stood unshakable for thousands of years, exploded to pieces. Loud noise. It makes countless underworld gods and dead souls around them look sideways. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, screamed. Rush into the collapsed building of Hades Hall. She reckoned her daughter Persephone was among them. Although the daughter of the high god's personality. It is impossible to be injured by collapsing buildings. When the aftermath of the confrontation between the top 2 gods, if it accidentally swept there. Then I don't know. Seeing Demeter rushing towards the ruins behind the Hades Hall, Hades' face froze. He wanted to prevent this sister from going to find his queen. But the bright figure of Phoros has already appeared in front of him. Your Majesty Pluto, this is the first time I have exchanged ideas with you, so it can't just start and end. Phoros, do you really want to break up with me completely? Under the dark net of death, Hades stared coldly at the once most powerful subordinate in front of him. Phoros said indifferently, Hades, it's not because of me that I have come to this point. From the day you brought Hermes into Hades, you should have realized that there will be this moment. You mean, I'm smart enough to cause all this? Hades sneered. He doesn't feel like he's done anything wrong. As the Lord of the Underworld, I don't bet everything in the Underworld on the attitude of a certain faction of gods. That's the right thing to do. As the king of Hades, he should control everything in Hades. No one should be independent of his Wong Quan. Phoros sighed. Because I was afraid that I might betray you, so I prepared in advance, which eventually caused me to betray you. This is really a fool of fate, and even if you are fooled, you still don't realize it. Quote. Perhaps, but this is the destiny of being a king. Clenching the double fork tightly, Hades's black robe was hunting. There was an unrivaled determination on his face. That's all. Both of them were speechless to each other. The only thing left is to hand over the weapon in your hand to decide the outcome. The winner is right. The loser is the mistake. Boom. The net of death expanded, and the endless depth was like a dark and twisted alley. From the dark figure of Hades, the coldness and treachery expanded. Lord of the Underworld, King of all the dead. The main authority held by Hades is death. But it is different from Thanatos, the god of death, who only symbolizes the end of physical life. The power of death held by Hades. It is all things, the final death and decay. The ultimate withering of all spirits and intellects. Phoros, you just said fate. But in my opinion, there has always been only one destiny in this world, which is doomed and inevitable. That is death. Hades, icy voice echoed in the dark sky of Hades. With the unique coldness that belongs to the king of death, he is always in the cold perspective of absolute reason. In his hand is a double fork that symbolizes birth and death. Sharply drawn a series of beautiful arcs in the dark void. Like a book of judgment outlining life and death stroke by stroke, densely intertwined and covering Phoros' whole body. Phoros was keenly aware. Invisibly, there seems to be a sharp knife light. Cutting his life force. Cut off his immortal life as a god. There was a smile on his lips. If it is by other means, it will be expected. But for something like vitality, I'm afraid you won't be able to kill me. Suddenly, the blood of the undead in his body. Crash flowing. It permeates every corner of the divine body, glowing with indescribable vitality. He was full of vitality. Like a rising sun in the east, it surges endlessly, emits endless light and heat, and shines on the earth and sky endlessly. Hades' face slowly changed. His power of death. Strip off the vitality of others. Often, all the life of a lower god can be cut off at once. Even if it is the main god, he will be covered with wrinkles after receiving thousands of swords. Like a candle in a weather-beaten wind. And in this instant, he looked at the young blonde god in front of him. A total of 100,000 knives were chopped off. Not even a single white hair appeared on the opponent's head. What kind of vitality is this? He was in shock. Phoros finally moved. Standing in the dark void, the spirit stick in his hand suddenly shot out beams of bright light. Like a sharp javelin, it quickly nailed Hades all over his body. Hades' expression froze, and his double-pronged fork swung in front of him. Suddenly, there was an invisible giant net intertwined with the power of death. Horizontal in front, all the light beams shot by the spirit stick were blocked by the giant net. Well, at this time, Phoros' eyes flashed with a deep light. The mysterious eye sees all things. In the endless darkness of light and shadow, penetrate the gaps in this net of death. The spirit stick shot out light again. Brush. Dozens of sharp beams like javelins. Bitter piercing through the web of death. Shoot down where Hades stands. At the critical moment, Pluto sharply waved the double-pronged fork in his hand, splitting most of the falling beams. But there are still so many brilliant light beams, icy and cold running through his body. Tick! Exclamation mark. The black divine blood dripped coldly in midair. The flames of resentment have flooded into the heart from the wound. Hades' iron face was filled with frost. He was wounded. Wrong. The battle-tested intuition made him quickly swing the double fork. Carrying monstrous power of death, facing the left side. As predicted, after successfully injuring Hades, the bright figure of Phoros quickly approached from the direction. Pong! The spiritual staff fell heavily from the sky. It collided heavily with Hades' double fork. Phoros is inherently powerful. Hades was just traumatized again. Under the strong impact, the Hades staggered back a few steps in an instant. Void vibration. You can be the main force to defeat Pontos in the ocean, you really have real strength. Stabilize the figure with the double fork. Hades' dark eyes stared solemnly at the approaching Phoros. The fight was only for a moment. But he already knew that the young god in front of him was very powerful. Definitely his lifelong rival. Since the Titan War, I haven't met a truly powerful opponent for a long time. But I never forgot what it was like to fight. A king is destined to be born in battle, the pinnacle of the world. I am the king of Hades, you can't defeat me here. He drank heavily and hoarsely. Hades, who was soaked in blood, had an unprecedented chill on his cold face. It complements each other with the massive power of death around it. Bursting out of the sky-shattering aura of the king. The entire underworld shook instantly. It seems to be resonating and assisting the king of this world. The dark figure of Hades blends perfectly in the dark space of Hades. Without using the Eye of Mystery, Phoros could not detect his whereabouts. It was as if he had become a part of Hades. Or Hades became part of him. Suddenly, The pitch-black sharp double-pronged fork, in the endless darkness. It pierced coldly from Phoros, back. The indescribable weight of death, such as special on the cold and stern artifact. Just get stabbed. Will be stripped of all vitality. Return to the dominion of death. The cold light flickered for a moment. Phoros turned abruptly. The spiritual rod carried majestic power, and struck heavily on the sharpened double-strand fork. Jung, crisp like the sound of metal clashing. The humming spread in the vast space of Hades. The ear-piercing sound waves made many souls in the underworld dizzy. And a god of the underworld. It was shocked by the aftermath of the collision that came immediately. Quote. It's His Majesty Pluto and His Highness Phoros, why are they fighting? The gods of Hades were astonished. The son of the goddess of the night, Phoros, the god of opportunity, is a god appointed by Hades. He has a lofty status in the underworld, commanding thousands of dead souls. Recently, he has made extraordinary achievements in the ocean. Such a god who can be called the pride of Hades. Why did he suddenly fight with Hades, the lord of the underworld, in the sky? The gods of the underworld don't quite understand it. Only a few gods who knew something about the situation were secretly sighing at this moment. Pluto and His Royal Highness Phoros, after all, it is still difficult to get along with each other. Today's battle may determine the future of Hades. Quote. They are sighing, and the dead souls scattered all over the underworld. They were all frightened by the loud noise in the sky. But then they were surprised to find that there were two figures confronting each other in the sky. There is one that is very familiar. Especially the dead souls in the city of St. Phoros. They looked up at the tall statue in the heart of the city-state, Zhao's good. The demeanor and temperament are completely consistent. The benevolent and great god of opportunity finally sees you again. In front of the statue in the city of St. Phoros, there is a vigorous dead girl. Muttering and gazing at the sky, the blonde deity who cannot be forgotten after many years. She still remembers the great flood that wiped out the world. Only because she has the blood of the gods in her body, she retains her intelligence after death. Drifting blankly on the extinct land. At that time, it was the blonde god and the beautiful goddess Hecate. Together, she and her compatriots were given salvation. Let the bronze humans abandoned by the king of the gods. In the kingdom of the dead in the underworld, a new life was obtained. The city of St. Phoros is the city of hope. A place of hope for all the dead. Staring dazedly at the two figures who were fighting fiercely in the sky. When she was a human being, the girl named Kana knelt quietly in front of the statue. Solemnly pray, O fair-haired youngest son of the goddess Nyx, O Phoros the most holy and good. You are the god of opportunity, the lord of thousands of dead souls, the light of redemption. In the ignorance of death, you light the flame of the spirit, and you guide the way ahead in the ignorance and confusion. Her prayers. Joy attracts many dead souls around. These dead souls also knelt together and chanted the names of the blonde gods in the sky. Their voices joined together. Under the dead and dark sky of Hades, it keeps echoing. The prayers of many dead souls. Continuously echoing over the dark sky of Hades. Layer upon layer, enduring. In fierce battle, the gloomy figure of Hades fused with the vast underworld suddenly surged with anger. Ignorant ants, you humiliate me like this. His heart is full of hatred. He is the real master of the underworld. But when you are fighting with others, the dead souls in the Hades actually recited the names of their opponents one by one. Shame. It simply overturns the entire ocean, and it cannot be washed away. Phoros, you. Ice-cold roar. The figure of Hades is surrounded by infinite death, blending into the endless darkness. Flickering quickly in the vast space. The double-pronged fork flashed coldly, carrying monstrous power of death, and directly attacked Phoros. Also listening to the endless prayers below. Phoros was silent. Imaginary wings of light and fire suddenly spread out behind him, a magnificent sacred aura. Turbulent waves this dark sky. Under the dazzling light. Countless dead souls and many gods in the land of the underworld. They all felt an unprecedented brilliance and holiness. In this eternally dark, endlessly cold underworld space, illuminate their front and purify their hearts. Boom. The spirit stick splits horizontally. The divine body of Phoros suddenly drew a graceful arc in midair. The double-pronged fork collided fiercely with the spiritual staff again. The radiant brilliance and the dark death have a harsh impact. Whether it's the dark space shrouded in death, or the enchanted realm covered in divine radiance. There was a crisp cracking sound. One after another deep cracks spread across the sky of Hades like ferocious scars. The violent aftermath spread in all directions. Shake the earth. Well, okay. The fork and the staff were dead against each other. Phoros and Hades stared. There is only coldness and perseverance in each other. Step, step, step. The supreme heart in Phoros' body was beating, and the divine body exploded with unrivaled power. The body rolled forward step by step. Step out and step on the void. Hades could hardly resist this tyrannical force. The pitch-black figure was pushed back step by step. Both arms trembled, as if they were not supported. The Lord of Hades gritted his teeth. The figures suddenly overlapped again in the dark and dead world of Hades. His own form disappeared in an instant. Instead, it was replaced by a turbulent and heavy death force, like a rolling wave. Genshin slapped the bright figure in front of him. Phoros, silver eyes flashed. Behind him, the burning wings of light and fire vibrated fiercely. The raging flames descended from the sky, igniting the infinite darkness around them. The blazing flames are also like raging waves, roaring against the waves of death. Crash, waves and waves, the darkness of death, the splendor of flame. Violence intertwined. It was as if two barrels of explosives, the most violent in the world, ignited each other amidst the rumbling sound. Terrible loud noise, endless aftermath. The sky shaking reverberates in the vast underworld. The gods on the land of the underworld were horrified. But not just Hades. The powerful existence of the two main gods of the ninth rank and the apex of the gods. Fierce clashes, shocking waves. Even the earth and the vast sky outside felt the huge earthquake. In the palace of the king of Olympus, the gods of Athena, who were quietly waiting for the news from Hades, instantly sensed the monstrous vibration. Sitting on the throne Zeus. He suddenly turned his gaze to Hades in surprise. It's Phoros and Hades, they're fighting. The king of gods was a little surprised. He thought that Phoros would go to Hades to negotiate, and at most there would be a crack in the relationship with Hades. But I didn't expect the two to fight directly. Well, that's great. Both of these two are lord gods of the ninth rank, regardless of the outcome of the victory or defeat. Mutual affirmation has damage, and no matter how difficult it is to get along with each other, it is a good opportunity for him to gradually control the underworld. Zeus was secretly delighted. The gods of Olympus below all frowned. The hearth goddess Hestia in a red dress, dignified cheeks with worry. What's going on? Phoros and Demeter went to Hades to negotiate with Hades. Now that you don't see Persephone, Phoros and Hades are fighting. The surrounding gods, such as Themis, Athena, Apollo, and Artemis, also have different expressions. Concentrate on the battle to Hades. Unlike land and sea, Hades is actually an independent world. Though connected to the earth, sky, and sea, the gods can cast their gaze into it. But it can't be seen very clearly, like paying attention to the battles of the ocean and the earth. Get insight into all the details that happen inside. After paying attention for a while, the goddess of the stove couldn't help saying, God King, how about I let you go to Hades to see what happened? Zeus on the throne shook his head. Goddess of the stove, why worry? Maybe it's just that Phoros is young and energetic and wants to compete with Hades. We can't make a fuss and make people laugh. Quote. The god king knew that his eldest sister was still very prestigious with Hades and Phoros. He refused to let her go immediately. He also wants the two people in the underworld to fight more fiercely, and the more conflicts are entangled, the better. Zeus refused, and Hestia couldn't help it, although she is honorable. In private, the three Zeus brothers were very respectful to her. But in the God King palace, in front of many gods, she could not defy the will of the King of Gods openly. At this moment, she suddenly sensed. Look, the one on the ruins BHDJ, seems to be Demeter. She dug up a girl, it's Persephone. The gods followed her will. Although blocked by the dark and deep space of Hades, he still vaguely saw a figure in the shape of a goddess of agriculture. Under the ruins of the palace at the side, a girl was dug out, and her appearance was also vaguely similar to Persephone. Zeus above laughed at this moment. Goddess of the stove, don't worry, German Terra is fine. Persephone has also been found. Quote, Hestia in a red dress still frowned. Although Demeter found Persephone, the battle between the two terrifying figures in the sky of Hades continued fiercely. Hades, what is he going to do? Sneak Persephone to Hades, and Phoros and Dritter go to ask for it. In the end, it was a fight with Phoros, and Demeter went to find her daughter. The goddess of the stove feels that this matter is too problematic. Boom! The upper end of the dark space of Hades. The heavy death power and the magnificent sacred power are still colliding fiercely. The terrible aftermath broke the space, disturbed the law, and shook the world. Phoros and Hades intertwine. All push the power to the extreme. Almost surpassed the limit of the 9th level of the main god, and marched towards the realm of the apex of the transcendent god. Phoros is a powerful boost of the supreme heart, and his own potential is amazing. It is the 4 generations of god kings who should have been doomed by fate. The 9th level of the main god is not the limit of his blood potential. And Hades is because he is the Lord of Hades. In this kingdom of the dead, obtaining the care and blessing of the underworld invisibly, the power is far from comparable to the outside world. Like Poseidon versus Pontos. However, Pontos himself is also the god of the sea, and has the powerful ability to combine the power of the sea. Therefore, Poseidon, as the contemporary emperor of the sea, is not obvious. It is mainly reflected in being hanged from the beginning to the end by Pontos. There were a lot of injuries and attrition, and in the end, half of the combat power was maintained. Been beaten all the time, never fell down. The world favors identities like Neptune and Pluto. In fact, it is more aimed at the original god who is also a part of the world. If Gaia, Nyx, etc. are the original, in the underworld and the ocean, they will attack Hades and Pontos. They will directly stimulate the corresponding source of the world and give these 2 kings great favor. This is also a king like Hades and Poseidon. In front of the original god, he can still retain some confidence. It is not good for the Yuan to kill them directly in their respective realms. As for Zeus, he is enough to be comparable to the original source. It is easy to defeat Gaia, Nyx and other root law positions, but it is not so simple to kill him. At this moment, in the face of a non-original god like Phoros, the favor given by Hades is not strong. It was just barely enough for Hades to go from the 9th level of the main god to the level close to the apex of transcending gods. In fact, it's not just realm rulers like Neptune and Pluto. Ordinary gods. In their respective realms, they can also be favored. Gods of the underworld such as Thanatos and Shuin. The combat power in Hades is actually much stronger than in the outside world. Phoros fought against the sons of Pontos in the ocean. Also under the blessing of the ocean, their strength exceeds their own rank. I just encountered high-level main gods like Phoros and Athena. Their buffs didn't change anything. Instead, Zeus, Athena, Apollo, Hermes, Ares and other gods. The blessings obtained from the sky are often very inconspicuous, equal to none. This can also be regarded as the world itself, a kind of balance for the weak god of Hades and sea god. The gods are the darlings of the world. Phoros and Hades fought fiercely for a long time. Hades' eyes suddenly changed. Impressively saw the ruins of Hades' Hall in the distance. Demeter successfully found her daughter Persephone. To take her out of Hades. Don't try to escape. Hades roared, and his figure completely merged into the void of Hades. The endless power of death is like an endless torrent. Attempt to rush away from the Phoros in front of him. Go to stop Demeter, mother and daughter. Back off. You can't do it. Hades slammed under the violent and tyrannical impact. Phoros' silver eyes were cold and stern. The wings burning with light and fire behind him vibrate quickly. The supreme heart on the chest is even more bouncing, jumping. Extremely powerful mighty power surged majestically around the body of the god. Flying golden hair, he turned into a sacred sky, brilliantly blocking the direction of Hades. Puff, puff, puff. The berserk and heavy death power, fierce impact, continuous. Hades seems to be integrated with Hades, the essence of death, the king of the dead. But let him carry the vast and infinite death power of the underworld and continue to attack. Block the sacred sky ahead. Always stand still. And on the ruins of Hades' Hall. With beautiful cheeks and tears of joy, Demeter embraced the daughter she found in front of her. Persephone, mother has brought you home. A romantic girl with olive hair and emerald green eyes hugged her mother's head. He whispered, "Mom, I'm fine. Pluto, that fierce guy, is actually so stupid, I can't even see that I'm pretending to cry, it's so funny." With a smug smile on her face, she patted her dusty skirt, pouted and said, "It's just so dirty and dark in here." Looking at her daughter. The goddess of agriculture is angry and funny. Hugging her tightly, she murmured, "Persephone, let's go back to Olympus. Your father god they are waiting for us." Quote. The girl nodded her head. With emerald green eyes like gems, they blinked and looked at the two figures in fierce conflict in the sky. "Mother, is that big brother the one in Athens last time? He grew so fast, he was not much taller than me at the time, but now I have only grown a little, and he has grown half a head taller." Persephone seemed depressed, gesturing at her height. The goddess of agriculture was not in the mood to answer her daughter's question. "Grab her and go outside the Hades. Phoros, stop fighting Hades, come with me." She yells at the Phoros above as she walks. Hear the voice. Hades, who merged into the darkness of the underworld and constantly impacted the sacred sky, the power of death surged even more powerfully. He wants to break through Phoros' block forcefully. "Take back your queen." Feeling the increasingly violent impact of Hades, Phoros, shrouded in divine radiance, had a faint smile on his lips. "Goddess Demeter, take your daughter back first, and I'll be right back." Demeter nodded. Pulling her daughter, she quickly left. He is about to leave Hades. Hades was in a hurry, and his figure gritted his teeth and emerged. Wielding the double-pronged fork, he stabbed Phoros hard. "Get out of the way." Pluto's roar is shocking, and the double-pronged fork carries a majestic death force, sharply piercing into the magnificent and sacred sky. Phoros' eyes were indifferent. Hades' eagerness is often the biggest cause of failure. "That's why you're going to come out here and fight with me. This is the reason why you will be defeated in front of me soon." The voice fell. The supreme heart in Phoros' body thumped to the extreme. The holy wings, intertwined with light and fire, flickered fiercely. The strength of the whole body is like a burning flame. Reach the fiercest flames. Bang bang bang. There are several blazing flames in a row, sacred and magnificent, like sword light, bitterly tearing open the thick curtain of death. Hades screamed. There were wounds on his body. But that's just the beginning. The infinite blazing flames are like endless recovery beams, sharply flashing a bright arc in the dark midair. Tear off layers of death darkness, covering the tall body of the Lord of Hades. "Back off. How could I lose to you?" Hades roared angrily, and his forks danced wildly, urging the vast space of Hades, like an endless power of death. The sharp forked cold stars sprinkled across the depths of the dark space, smashing the rushing light beam once and for all. The boundless death that condensed the power of the king of the underworld blatantly impacted the divine brilliance that filled the sky. Phoros looked composed. It is also the power that is pushed to the extreme. Incomparably majestic power of death, and extremely magnificent divine power. The ultimate collision. Countless lights and shadows interweave the dark space of Hades. The earth trembled, the law was disordered, and the void shook. The gods of Olympus frowned at the discovery. Even if they pay vague attention to the battle of Hades, they can't do it. The power of Hades and Phoros completely confused their sight. What to do? It is no longer possible to know the situation of the battle in Hades. The gods and the god king Pallas looked at each other. With a sullen face, Zeus suddenly ordered, "Hermes, the goddess of agriculture, has come out of Hades with Persephone. Go and pick her up, she must know the specific situation of Hades." Quote. "Yes, Father God." Hermes leads. Quickly launch the travel power jumping space in a few clicks. Come to the exit of Hades not far away. I saw Demeter hurriedly bringing her daughter out of Hades. Goddess Demeter, what happened? Why did Hades secretly kidnap Persephone and fight Phoros? Hades, that ugly and cold guy, wants me to be his queen. When Persephone replied angrily, when learned by the gods of Olympus, including Zeus, the many gods of Olympus couldn't help being stunned. After arguing for a long time, Hades actually wanted the daughter of the goddess of agriculture to be his queen. I really didn't see it. On weekdays, he is a cold, serious Pluto. There is such a side. In order to find a queen for himself, he came up with such a thing. Fortunately, everyone thought he had some ulterior motive. In the palace of the God King, many gods stared with wide eyes. They are silent to each other. And at this time, the terrifying confrontation over the underworld has also reached its most intense moment. Feeling that Persephone has been taken out of Hades by Demeter, Hades was furious. The infinite power of death in the underworld spread violently to the splendid sacred power. The shocking collision continued the collision. The vast land of the underworld was constantly shaking. But the angrier Hades became, the more flaws he exposed when he lost his composure. Under the insight of the mystical eye of Phoros, a series of piercing beams of light slashed across Hades' body, make him bloody and weak. And then feel even more sad. There are more and more offensive loopholes. Finally, Phoros, spirit staff, blooms the most eye-catching sacred light. His figure flickered, sharply pierced Hades' chest. Laugh. The crystal staff pierced through the pain of the body. Make Hades tremble. Immediately, more turbulent divine power struck his abdomen heavily. The Lord of Hades staggered and was kicked off the sky. Fell into a messy land of Hades, collapsing powerlessly. And the spirit stick was still piercing the center of his chest coldly. Phoros gripped the other end of the staff tightly. He looked at the fallen Lord of Hades coldly. Hades, you lost. Yeah, I lost. Feel the sharp pain in the chest. Hades opened his eyes with difficulty, looking at the surroundings broken and disordered by him and Phoros, a gloomy space. He said coldly, "You want to kill me." Phoros drew back the spirit stick, abruptly, took out a handkerchief, and gently wiped the blood on it. Of course it's impossible. Zeus won't allow it, and neither will Poseidon. Hearing the names of the two brothers, Hades sneered. Oh, I sure didn't misread you. You have never been loyal to me or to them. Yes, there is no king in this world that I can submit to. Phoros said lightly, as an outstanding god with a complete world outlook on life, and values. How could he have the feudal dross thought of being loyal to a certain king? What's more, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, which of these three is worthy of being called a great king and worthy of loyal following? Please look in the mirror first. So you did nothing wrong. Even if you don't do it, you will still betray me sooner or later. I failed because I didn't strike early enough, and I wasn't ruthless enough. Struggling to get up on the ground, Hades spoke coldly. If you think so, I have no calendar. Phoros shook his head. He thought he was a three-good god with a certain moral sentiment. He never coveted the idea of power in the underworld. But Hades has no choice but to want power, and no one thinks that the other party wants to take his power. Trust is a good thing. But he didn't. That leaves nothing to say. Gripping the staff of spirit tightly, he stared indifferently at Hades' dark eyes, and said coldly, "If you lose, you have to pay the price. This is one of the eternal laws in the world. Hades, since the temple of Hades has been destroyed, all the affairs of the Hades will be handed over to the temple of Hecate and me. You have worked hard all these years, so find a place to rest. There is really no place to stay. I have a side hall. The place is not big, but it can accommodate me." Phoros, you. Hades stared at the indifferent Phoros. The eyes almost burst into flames. Send everything from Hades to the temples of Phoros and Hecate. Then he, Pluto, is just a puppet. He was extremely sad and indignant. But Phoros wasn't bargaining with him. After a light notice, he said indifferently, "This is the price you should pay for your mistakes." Put away the handkerchief and the spiritual stick that was wiped clean. He walked slowly into the distance. When the surroundings are impacted by the war and the chaotic space returns to normal, the gods of Olympus cast their eyes again. I only saw Phoros walking slowly into the distance with a straight body. And Hades, who hunched over and roared as if venting. Due to the obstruction of the underworld space, they couldn't see what was going on. But judging from the general behavior of the two, in the battle between the god of opportunity and Pluto, it seems that Pluto lost the battle. Otherwise, why would he look haggard and howling? This result shocked the gods. Although Phoros, the god of opportunity, had previously defeated Pontos, the original god of the sea, in the ocean. But at that time he was fighting with the Sea Emperor. Although various circumstances speculate that he is the main force. But there are also opposing views. After all, the god of opportunity is only a very young god, 437. Although the talent is amazing, he is already the ninth level of the main god, the pinnacle of the god. But it is impossible to surpass Poseidon, the emperor of the sea. Seeing is not believing. At that time, maybe the momentum at that time was actually that the sea emperor secretly took over half of Pontus' power. It's just that I and the gods have shallow eyesight and can't see it. But the picture presented in front of my eyes. This ridiculous assumption is undoubtedly torn apart. Hades, the king of the underworld, the eldest son of the second-generation god King Cronus. The lord of Hades among the three kings of Shenting. Regarding the strength of him and Poseidon, the sea emperor, which one is stronger and weaker? This has been one of the few notable controversies of the gods. After all, the three kings of God's court, Zeus, the king of gods, ranks first, beyond doubt. But Neptune and Pluto are hard to guess. It is generally believed that the strength of the two kings is not much different. They are all powerful kings at the apex of the gods. But such a powerful Pluto. Actually in Hades, his own home field. Lost to the god of chance. Unless the facts are in front of you. It is difficult for the gods to accept this reality. Sitting high on the throne, Zeus pursed his lips at some point. The eyes looking towards Hades are full of fear and coldness. What a son of Nyx, actually defeated Hades. If I let you continue to grow, wouldn't it make you the original? Think of what the three goddesses of fate said. It is difficult to achieve the original words by oneself. The chill in Zeus' heart grew deeper. He would never allow Phoros to threaten his god like this, to continue like this out of hand. Giving him Pandora as a reward is indeed the right decision. I hope that the disasters and ominousness that Atropos and the others talk about are more serious, and let him fall miserably. My heart is ruthless, Zeus said loudly to Hermes, who just came back. Since the affairs of the underworld are over, you should hurry up and ask the god of chance to come back. I will continue to reward him. Quote, Zeus sounded very urgent. Many gods present were full of jealousy. How much does the god king like this Phoros, so anxious to ask him to come back to receive the reward? Only Athena frowned secretly. She didn't think there was anything good about Zeus being so eager. She is very worried about Phoros. After Hermes took the order over there, he secretly sighed that he was also working hard. Because of his fast speed, he is always the one who runs errands, but he never receives the reward. But he didn't dare to neglect, and quickly activated the travel authority, jumping into the space to go to the underworld. O most holy and good Phoros, you are the god of opportunity, the lord of thousands of dead souls, and the light of redemption. In the ignorance of death, you are the flame that ignites the soul, and in the ignorance and confusion, you. Although the war is over. But in front of the huge statue in the city of St. Phoros, Kana is still praying sincerely with a group of dead souls. Suddenly, a bright light fell. A boy with blonde hair and eyes. Standing on the high platform, he quietly glanced at his own statue. He said to the girl below, "Your name is Kana, right? I remember you." Many souls of the dead watched in surprise and amazement as the gods that appeared suddenly, exactly like the statue above, knelt down excitedly. Only Kana, who was named, stared blankly at the familiar figure above. Great god of opportunity, you actually remember my name. Phoros smiled lightly. Although Hecate and I have attracted many dead souls on the ground after the Great Flood. But there aren't many who can preserve their own sanity after death, and you are the most daring of them all. Quote, God of chance, I was too ignorant at that time to collide with you and Goddess Hecate. The muscular dead soul girl said nervously. Don't be afraid, you have a lot of personality. Phoros looked at her with a smile. He glanced at the dead souls present again. He said softly, I still remember that you asked me why the human beings on the earth were extinct. Well, you said let me live in the underworld, and one day I will understand. And now, finally, I kind of get it. Karna recalled. A trace of heaviness suddenly appeared on her face. Oh, what's your answer? After hesitating for a while, the soulless girl replied resolutely in a voice so subtle that only Phoros could hear. Because the so-called gods, except for a few, are all the most brutal and shameless. The girl's bold words made Phoros smile. Your insights are brilliant. The girl said at this time, it is precisely because I know the absurdity of most gods that I know the greatness of a true god like you. She recited the name of Phoros reverently again. True gods, great. Poros smiled and shook his head. The bright and solemn figure of my sister flashed through my mind. In his heart, only a god like Athena deserves such a title. As for himself, he wasn't really that good. It's normal at best. But there are gods such as Zeus and Ares for comparison. As a normal person, he appears to be of noble character, set off to produce beauty. Your Highness Poros, I believe that with the existence of gods like you, this world will eventually usher in a new era. The girl on the ground murmured firmly. Poros gave her a smile. The figure disappeared in front of the statue. It really shouldn't be far. Hades lost, and I have mastered the basic sovereignty of Hades. Ocean has Teacher's Palace and Prometheus. With Poseidon's ability, they are not their opponents at all, and it is only a matter of time before they succeed. Then there's only Olympus left. However, with my current personality, I may not be able to win against Zeus. Unless I become the 10th rank of the main god, or I am promoted to the original. Muttered inwardly. Poros' figure suddenly paused. Just now, after the battle with Hades, when he saw Kana and other dead souls praying, he felt a strange feeling in his heart. That's why he stopped and had a conversation with the soulless girl. During the conversation, the feeling suddenly became more profound. Although the front is still obscure and inexplicable. But suddenly there is a direction. The direction leading to the primordial road above the Lord God. Speaking of this battle in the underworld, those gods who watched the battle contributed a lot of fame to me. Now there are already 2.5 million reputation points, which is not far from 3 million. Quote. Suddenly remembered to check the system panel. Poros felt that he was really not far from sending Zeus on his way. Although I don't know what the 3 million reputation gift pack can get, but I think it won't be worse than the 1 million. And by himself, he has already touched the original threshold. As long as one of these two items is completed, it is not far from completely surpassing Zeus. In pondering, he came to Hecate's temple in Hades. A quiet girl in a long brown dress was standing at the door, as if she knew he was coming. Last time in the ocean, I was borrowed by the goddess Nyx. After that, you didn't mention me from the beginning to the end. You really have no conscience. Upon meeting, Hecate pouted and hummed. But wait a while. But did not wait for the voice of Poros to apologize. The boy with blonde hair and silver eyes in front of him sighed sadly. Goddess Hecate, the goddess of opportunity who is intelligent, dignified, intelligent, and beautiful, the vice lord of the underworld and the creator of magic. My best friend since I was a child, and my companion on the road of truth. Quote. As early as the first time I saw your serious face, the throbbing from the depths of my soul let me know. The bond with you will be with you forever from that day to the present day. No need to speak, no need to meet, this bond will allow our hearts to communicate with each other. Having said this, he stared at Hecate's flushed cheeks, shook his head triumphantly and said. But I didn't expect that all this is just my superficial opinion. But you are still at the superficial level of a fool, needing worldly comfort instead of the mutual understanding of the soul. Snapped. Poros just finished speaking with a disappointed expression. Originally, there seemed to be shame on the cheeks, but it was the girl in the brown skirt who was ashamed. Suddenly with the slender fingers, knocked on his head. The kid back then, now he's learning more and more badly. Do you think you can run me down with such goosebump-inducing words? Hecate stared angrily. Poros grabbed her knocking hand and said awkwardly. I just learned this tone from Hades, thinking about trying. Unexpectedly, it failed the first time. Quote, what does this have to do with Pluto? Hecate asked curiously. Poros roughly repeated what Hades had said to Persephone in the Hall of Hades earlier. Then tell the whole story about it. Only then did Hecate know what was the cause of the great battle that shook Hades just now. I didn't expect us and His Majesty Hades to come to this point in the end. Hecate felt a little sad. She still remembered the scene when Hades invited herself and Poros out from the realm of night. How long has it been since now? Everything has become like this. Poros said softly. Everyone has their own choice. Hades chose his path, so we can only choose ours. Then one day, will you and I go on different paths? Hecate looked at him seriously. Poros held her hand tightly, looked at the dark sky of Hades, and smiled. As I said just now, we are companions who cuddle together, and our bond will last forever from that day to the present day. The corner of Hecate's mouth curled into a beautiful arc. At this time, a few nymphs came running from afar, and anxiously reported. My lord Poros, goddess Hecate. His Royal Highness Hermes of the god court came to look for His Royal Highness Poros, as if he was in a hurry. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.